swinging. I'll be your number one with a bullet. Go to Garden Complex.
All right. Good evening. We are right back. Myself, Eric Lindquist, like we never left. I'm telling you, take one good look at Eric and you tell me if he moved in the last half hour since we just recently were on with you. Now we open up a busy night of content here on the Yahoo edition of the Deeper Dive. So we have you covered. I'm telling you, he didn't move. Look at him. He didn't move over the next half hour. We are going to get you covered any and every way possible with the Yahoo-specific 6-game slate that we have tonight. Jordan is here producing, so he's going to make sure that we do everything. We'll tell you about Yahoo, the link to click below, the 1 free month of Awesemo Plus, all of that. But I feel like I just saw you, my friend.
You did. Sorry, I was muted. We just got done doing some NFL content. Just an invigorating football game here tonight with the corpse of the Green Bay Packers and the Arizona Cardinals. What was shaping up to be an absolute dynamic Thursday night game, by far our most dynamic. I think it'll still be entertaining. It's going to be a massive, ridiculous showdown slate. But excited to be talking some hoops because that's where it's at tonight.
We have, I know you have coined the stars or at least have maximized the value for stars and scrubs on here. I always associate that with you. So if this is an Alex Baker phrase that's going to have me the risk of being fired now as a result of coining it to you, then I apologize. But I've always associated stars and scrubs, right? You didn't rip
I didn't come up with that. No, I did not. I wish I did. That'd be awesome. But yeah, no, it's
not that you came up with it, but that you have maximized the value of the phrase. So now it's associated with you.
I would say to a certain extent or something. I don't even really know. What are we talking about? Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, sure.
Just yes or no. That's fine.
Yes.
All right. Let's look at everything tonight. My guy is a game time decision. I don't even know how he would be even on your radar, but a couple of guys, whenever Luka is on the slate, that's going to raise some eyebrows. Steph is here as well. What are you looking at from an overall standpoint with these 6 games? And maybe there's a guy that you know you're going to lean heavy to, and maybe there's a guy that you know you're going to lean heavy away from.
Yeah, it's going to be really hard to get away from Luka. So we don't see a crazy, and I know this is something Adam Scherer talked about for years and years, but Luka Doncic doesn't see a huge upgrade here now with Kristaps Porzingis out, but inherently, you know that it just helps the number of times that he's going to be reaching his ceiling here in this spot. I love Luka Doncic. I think everybody's going to love Luka Doncic on this slate. I think on Yahoo, where he's 52, he's kind of in a tier of his own, but it still makes sense. I think that there's enough value. We have a lot of value in the Memphis side, a lot of really low totals around the entire board here, where I'm looking at Luka as somebody that I'm prioritizing for lineups. Even on Yahoo, $52, somebody that I'm going to be looking at getting to a copious amount of, and Stephen Curry, $48 as well. Those are kind of my priority guys that we're looking at for spend ups. Joel Embiid just hasn't been seeing the minutes. So we're talking about your Philly boy here. And it's hard for me. Andre Drummond is not good. He's not a great center, but he's somebody who can come in, I think, for 16 to 18 minutes and be serviceable and be somebody like that's the kind of role that he should have been filling in the NBA from the get-go. High energy guy, comes in, high fantasy point per minute producer. And it's just kind of resulted in them allowing Joel Embiid to just coast in a lot of these spots. So at the same price as Steph Curry, who is getting all of the usage, all of the run, really hard to in a vacuum prioritize Embiid at all. So yeah, the 3 main spend up there on Yahoo, it definitely goes Doncic, Curry in 1-2, very, very close for me, and then Embiid.
Really? So you are looking at Embiid as far as a pathway, or is that just what you're listing it as far as the 3 spend ups on Yahoo?
As far as the 3 spend ups on Yahoo. So yeah, I mean, I was just wanting to relate them. Yeah. So we have 2 point guard positions and eligibility. The beautiful thing about playing on Yahoo is that there are no dual eligibility kind of setups. Like you basically have the point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, and center that you have to be playing those positions on FanDuel, DraftKings. It's multi-positional eligibility all over the place there. So you are a little bit more stringent with some of your builds, but really hard to prioritize at the top anybody else except for Luka and Steph for me today.
Right. And we can tag Luka as the point and Steph at the guard slot. So we do have a little flexibility with the guard, the forward, and even as you mentioned, the utility spot here. So clearly a pathway or multiple pathways, if you will, to roster both. So let's look at that. And It's not so much from Luka. It's not so much from Steph. We pretty much know what we're getting there. But if it's anybody else that becomes a pivot for you, I don't know if you're even looking at Trey Young, also dealing with some injury concern coming into tonight. Ja Morant has pretty much been torching. If you're looking at maybe somebody much cheaper that you can get around, maybe you are looking at a $20 to $18 type play, I would stay away again from my guy, Tyrese Maxey. But I'm interested in your thoughts on a guy 21 for Kemba Walker, more of a mid-range guy. I don't know if you're punting based on how much you're getting to Steph and Luka, but really as far as a high price pivot to a middle of the range guy, anybody at all that you're, even a Dinwiddie, somebody like that you could be looking at.
Yeah, it gets interesting. I would say that interesting is probably the right way to talk about the point guard position, because
you're going to do that.
Yeah, well, there's a number of spots that I want to be going to, but they're going to be overpays comparably. Like Luka Doncic and Steph Curry, you're paying up for the ceiling, and we'll get to the center position last, but the best piece of value maybe of the entire year sits at the center position tonight. And I think it just opens up the entire board. You have Desmond Bane, you have D'Anthony Melton. It is on a back-to-back in that spot, but so cheap on Yahoo that I think getting up to Luka and Steph is going to be a majority of the way that I go on Yahoo. Kemba Walker, it was nice to see him be involved and actually get some run there, but Derrick Rose is Tibbs' boy. That's just kind of the way that it works out. And Derrick Rose is going to be playing a lot more minutes. There's no way that Derrick Rose playing for Tibbs is ever going to be limited in the same capacity that you see Kemba Walker with his low floor for two of these games, 22 minutes, 19 minutes, neither of those being foul trouble. So I don't even really know what to make of it. He was just really off. And so, I mean, trying to get to him at 21 just feels like a really no man's price. Spencer Dinwiddie is kind of interesting at $26.
A little high though, right?
It's high, but it's also there. If you can get to that 34-minute ceiling that you saw that second game out of the gate, you know, he is going to be more involved with this team, I think, offensively going forward. It's nice to see him back from injury. Nice to see him playing, you know, close to 30 minutes a night. So I think you can take shots, but these are all going to be really low owned tournament plays. The one guy to talk about, I think, specifically on Yahoo at the point guard position for me is Ja Morant. So he's $35 sitting at a lower price point. I mean, a lot of my builds are going to go Luka, Steph, Ja Morant. $35 is a discernible discount. When you talk about DK, where he was priced up at 10K or close to it, he's 9,600 here tonight. I guess he's been there back to back. And then on FanDuel 10K, Yahoo is the best place to go roster him in the best game environment of the night by far. You're looking at a 229 total here in this spot. It's, you know, 6-point Golden State favored there, but for all intents and purposes, going to stay closer than a game like Utah, Houston, than Philadelphia. They're double-digit favorites. You have some of these other game environments that are just garbaggio. So Ja Morant, another part of my builds where I think at the point guard position, I'm looking at paying up. And if I don't, it's going to be a lot of Jalen Brunson at $11, which is pretty clear cut.
We're going to hit the 2 here, but as mentioned, click these links we have below for you where you can take full advantage of what we have going on with Yahoo. The first one where you can claim $10 free for Yahoo contest. We're going to get you that free cash that you can put to use right away. And then if you're a new Yahoo user, you can get 1 month of Awesemo Plus Platinum for free. And that's just upon your first deposit and paid contest entry. We even have the links right there for you. Just need to go scroll below, click. This window will stay open. You can still listen to Eric, and we can go from there. All right, the 2 spot, clearly they're going to be a couple, really just 2.5. If you look at any real one, I would think, pay-up guy here with Mitchell, because Levine is still dealing with the thumb injury, so I don't know how confident you are in that, although you do have the Bulls tonight against the Knicks, so maybe that plays into it. Is this an opportunity here to start navigating a Hardaway Jr., start navigating somebody more in the middle? And this is where I might stick up for one of my guys in the middle at this spot as well, just so you know.
No, there's 2 guys in the middle. There's D'Anthony Melton, there's Jordan Poole. You should roster a ton of them. They're $18 and $15. If we're going to find savings and we want to spend up for these super ceilings, and I mean Luka Doncic, Steph Curry, and I'll even put Ja Morant there at $35, considering he's averaging 49 Yahoo points per game here at the moment. I would say that there's a massive ceiling in that game environment with Steph Curry defense. The two of them aren't going to guard each other. It's going to be so entertaining. But looking at that mid-range, it makes all the sense in the world to have more access to that late night hammer, to that last game environment of the night. I also want to be kind of looking at some late swap to maybe if I am dead in some of those lineups, yeah, it's an hour and a half later, but there's pivots within that own game where there could be some high upside options. We're looking at Memphis on a back-to-back. You can take the Kyle Anderson route automatically in the event that you're trying to bypass some spots. You can get to off of Jordan Poole, off of D'Anthony Melton, but those two guys specifically at the shooting guard position make all the sense in the world. Plus, you're going to be rostering them on other sites. I'm pretty sure the price tags are pretty advantageous around the entire industry, but just kind of being able to game stack up that team or that entire game on Yahoo tonight, it's just such a weapon to be able to have the extra roster spots to kind of really gel it and make it look like what you need it to in order to avoid a bunch of rostership. If you have lineups that are doing well, if some of the stands you take in the early games are doing well, you can jam in Melton and Poole. And in the event that they're not, you can find ways to get away from them within that game because they'll be down in your utility spot if you're playing both or in the guard spot. So definitely going to have the most of those two. Andrew Wiggins, kind of the other talking point, but who's your guy you're sticking up for?
Seth, I think that this is a great opportunity. He's at $16 coming off the worst game of the season, granted in this 4-game sample size, but the minutes are still there and the scoring opportunity, especially with Joel Embiid, limited minutes and not taking away a lot of looks down low. You mentioned Andre Drummond. They sure as hell aren't going to Drummond. Tobias Harris is not somebody that just automatically scores 40 if Joel Embiid is banged up or off the floor. Seth Curry is going to get a ton of looks against Detroit. He's going to be out there for 30 plus minutes tonight. Bounce back opportunity. It's a shooter. Shoot. You know that, E. I would look at him. $16. I would look at him.
Okay. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, every single person on Philadelphia will be in play if you have no Joel Embiid. So we're going to have a completely different conversation about them. But as it stands right now, I mean, I'm just not super enthusiastic about rostering Seth Curry there at $16. I get it. He definitely makes for an interesting tournament pivot. But you're looking at just such better value. I mean, the amount of time Jordan Poole is going to be going off here in this spot and D'Anthony Melton or Desmond Bane, we'll get to at the forward position, but D'Anthony Melton at the shooting guard position here, $15 for him. It's just such locked in production there. Going up against Detroit too, you're looking at blowout risk and some of these starters. Not that I want to be factoring that in too much. Otherwise, you'll never roster anybody on a slate like this because you have 2 or 3 games that are just massively lopsided. But Seth Curry, I guess, does make a little bit of sense. We've seen some ceiling out of him, 23 and 28 real points in 2 of the previous 3 that he's played here. But I don't know if that can necessarily continue. Maxey's going to get more involved eventually. God, that guy's been brutal in the early going of this season.
Don't mess with him. Don't trust him. See, I'm telling you to stay away from my guys. I'm not even biased with the Curry pick.
Well, you got to be able to know your own team. That's how you can really make some money off of them. You got to be honest about it too. So Seth Curry, low owned tournament dart only. That's about it.
No, look, I understand what you're saying, although Melton didn't even have a bucket, right, from the floor last game out. But I get what you're saying here. I'm not here to argue. I'm just here to
0 for 8, 0 for 5. I see positive regression in store, and he didn't sink you at that number.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Seth, I think he bounced back. But all right, let's look. You mentioned Poole and you mentioned Melton specifically. Those are your guys. I can't imagine that, especially with the heavy leverage that you're working with the point guards spot, that you're getting to much Spider or even Levine here with the injury. How much exposure do you anticipate getting to either or both of these two? And then we'll move on to the 3.
It's so hard because at this position, I mean, they're going to be really low owned. If I'm going to go to one of the 2, I would say Utah on the road against Houston. I mean, this Zach LaVine injury, I don't really know what to make of it. It's his non-shooting hand. That's a plus, but I heard you need your hands to play basketball. I think that's kind of an integral part of the game. Going to be tough for me to want to spend $36 and allocate a bunch of salary to that. Can he go out and put up, a 25, 30 point real point outing? The usage has been there repeatedly this entire season, but I don't necessarily trust that. It's going to be very stars and scrubsy, and to land in this mid $30, high $30 range is going to be pretty unnecessary on this slate.
All right, so let's start to hit the front court now, and we'll look at the 3 spot. And again, as we mentioned here, you do have the flexibility of a guard, a forward, and then ultimately the utility place. So you're not locked in so much as you don't have the small forward, power forward, or point guard, shooting guard you may have on another site. Let's look at the 3 here. And from volume standpoint alone, the guy that you would pay up, the only guy you're paying up is Bradley Beal, the red-hot Washington Wizards hosting the Hawks tonight. But you start to look down a little bit, and to your point about blowout opportunity or just being down, Sadiq Bey comes in at a $24 type range. You can go a little bit lower there. But really, if you're spending up, I don't even know if you would count DeMar DeRozan as technically spending up, but the Bradley Beal selection here would be the high price guy.
So if we're going to talk about tournament plays, Sadiq Bey, $24 is really, really nice against Philadelphia. There are other sites where he's like upper 6Ks and it's borderline unplayable for me. And I do kind of want to have some exposure to that side, especially if you get Joel Embiid ruled out or something of that nature, where you're going to want to get some Detroit pieces on the other side. Sadiq Bey at $24. I mean, he's been really, really good in the early going of this season. This is going to be a bad basketball team. Don't get me wrong. 0-3 in the early going and no sights of hope in sight, or however you want to say that. Sadiq Bey, $24 is actually intriguing. DeMar DeRozan as well. If you're going to be limited, if you're going to say, hey, Zach LaVine isn't necessarily going to be as involved offensively right out of the gate, DeMar DeRozan, main beneficiary. It's a tough New York defense. They play slow. We know how Tibbs likes to kind of operate in these kind of spots. In a homecoming game, New York's probably going to be amped up, ready to go underneath him. Everybody on the Knicks seems to love to play for that dude, but I don't really give a shit about that. Mm-hmm. We're not looking into narratives here. DeMar DeRozan, $33 is a very, very intriguing tournament option for me, just because if he does carry more of the offensive workload, very, very consistent in the early going. He's put up over 35 Yahoo points every single game out this entire season. There could be a massive ceiling there that's kind of unspoken for us. So if I'm going to be taking a shot on anybody in the mid threes, like in the $30 range, DeMar DeRozan at small forward kind of sticks out for me.
You mentioned Desmond Bane. He caught the elbow to the face, but $13 seems like you were really interested when you brought him up earlier.
Yeah, he's too cheap. I mean, that's what it is. He's going to be one of the most popular plays on the entire Yahoo slate, and he should be. There's no doubt about it. I mean, you're looking at him at 24%. You're looking at Bradley Beal at 20.2%. And I get it with the Bradley Beal play, but $40 feels like a little bit of an overpay in this spot for me there. However, 33% or better usage in the last 3 games out here for him in the early going for Washington. So I get it. I would just rather go to Bane, or I think DeMar DeRozan at 15% is just a little bit more intriguing in the event that you do see any kind of limitation for Zach LaVine right out of the gate here, if he's not as willing of a shooter, which is impossible to imagine because it's Zach LaVine, but still. Desmond Bane, far and away my favorite piece of value at the small forward position.
Hit that thumbs up button, please. Make sure you're subscribed here to the Awesemo DFS channel. We have the odds and fantasy football channel as well. Here specifically with Yahoo for the next 12 minutes, but once we are done, the official deeper dive will take over. I know a lot of people in the chat asking some questions, but we're here focused with Yahoo. The 2 links below, take full advantage of the $10 free, and then a new user, you're going to get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Is there anybody else? I'm looking at the 2 guys from the Hawks, Cam and DeAndre Hunter, as possible cheap pivots away from the ownership, the heavy ownership that you're going to get with Desmond Bane.
Not really for me. I think if you're making a lot of lineups, they wouldn't crack my first 15, 20, simply because Bane is so locked in. DeMar DeRozan I would play and have some tournament exposure to. I prefer just about everybody. I mean, $12 is no doubt about it cheap for a guy who's projected to play 30 plus minutes in right. DeAndre Hunter. He would probably be the guy I'd want to be going to a little bit, but even Sadiq Bey, 5.8% that we've currently got for him. I think 34 minutes of him is still even a little bit more intriguing. Somebody's got to put up shots for Detroit, even in a tough matchup, even as double-digit dogs on the road in Philadelphia. But I don't really necessarily want to be going down to DeAndre Hunter. If you need the savings in order to fit in the combination of Curry, Doncic, sure, go ahead and try. But there's a $16 play at center that's just so locked and loaded for lineups tonight that I don't really need it.
I get it. I definitely get it. There's no real reason to, especially with the price point that you're getting, I think, with Sadiq Bey, which probably makes the most sense if you are spending some money. All right, so let's look at the 4. We know Kristaps is out tonight, and seeing about any bump up that it may cause. We talked a little bit in earlier here on the show about Hardaway Jr., but the man clearly is Julius Randle. Again, me personally, Eric, if I'm going to pay up at this position, I sure as hell am not going to try and take a bargain on Tobias Harris when $12 more, I get a guy who can put up MVP numbers.
Yes and no. this Julius Randle thing is tough for me to get a grasp on. So he's $44. We've seen 60 plus point ceiling here for him back to back. And he's somebody that I've just been expecting to have some kind of a regression with Kemba Walker involved. We saw last time Kemba Walker did actually get involved for the first time in a long time, but you're sharing usage with Derrick Rose and him in crunch time there. Looking at kind of the way that it's panning out, but 31.1% usage so far on the season for Julius Randle total. RJ Barrett way down to 18.1%. I expect that to come up. Evan Fournier, 21.2%. I expect that to come up. Kemba Walker, 19%. I expect that to come up too. There's just so many guys that are kind of around him that can get shots up. Sure, he gets involved in a multitude of ways, which is really the appealing part when it comes to playing Julius Randle, a triple-double upside, but you don't get the bonus for it over there. He's got a rebounding percentage of 15.3%, but he's sharing a court with Mitchell Robinson. I'm just very surprised that he's kind of hit the gate or come out of the gate running once again here this season. $44, it makes some sense getting up there, but again, I'm going to prioritize those guys at the point guard position. And if he falls by the wayside in some lineups, I might need to go to Tobias Harris at $32. And I don't feel like you're giving up that much in the event that there's no Joel Embiid. Obviously, he becomes one of the best plays on the slate. But Julius Randle, not going to be like a priority for me, but certainly somebody that if you got in some lineups, there's a crazy amount of ceiling there. But there's a reason he's under 10%, I think, on Yahoo. I think the field is kind of aware that $44, that's a pretty hefty tag for him.
Is there anybody even in that mid-range? I have a guy I'm looking at in that $10 to $13 range, especially with somebody else who could be out tonight on his squad, but above that. And, we kind of know the ceiling of a John Collins. So at $23, it's cheap as far as the option for John Collins, but at the same time, you kind of know what you're getting. You can take a little bit more of a risk with a Keldon Johnson, but are you looking at anybody in that mid-range since we already know where you're spending them earlier in the backcourt?
Yeah, my favorite tournament play of the entire slate on Yahoo, probably at any position for value, is Daniel Tice. Houston going up against Utah here. Yeah. They're going to have Sengun coming in as a backup at $14. I don't really think he's going to get enough minutes. We've got him projected for 19.5 there. But Christian Wood, not a traditional big, he's a center, but he, is an offensive center. And, I'm not sure necessarily how it's all going to break down, but Daniel Tice is $11. That's a guy who I see playing more than the 21 minutes we currently have him projected for. 23 and 29 minutes his last two games here. Both of those closely contested, both within 10 points or exactly 10 points, I suppose there. I think he probably ends up being on the floor a little bit more for his size. So Daniel Tice at $11 is just a really, really cheap piece of value down there. I think at the power forward position, that's kind of what I'm looking at doing, is finding ways to get off of the crazy chalk of Jaren Jackson Jr. $24 is too low of a number for him. We saw 31.9% usage for him yesterday, only played 18 minutes. Like usual, the guy gets in crazy amounts of foul trouble, and that just kind of suppresses some of what he's capable of doing on a floor. So when he's the most popular play at the position, sure, if he stays out of foul trouble, he could smash the slate into oblivion. But even still, if I'm going to go stars and scrubsy, $24 is kind of like a no man's land to land on him. So I'm getting to a lot of Daniel Tice. I'm definitely going to be 3x of 12% on that slate.
What about Gallinari? It's $1 more, comes back from the shoulder injury. Yep. You're going to get point per minute type value. I know the Hawks are deep, Eric, but Herter's a game time decision. There could be an opportunity to get 25, 28 minutes for a guy that you're basically paying $12 for.
Danilo Gallinari is interesting if you see those minutes start to trend up. I just don't really know what to make of it. I mean, he went 3 for 8 from the field, 20.5% usage rate, 20 minutes. 20 minutes of him is still something where you could maybe see something serviceable, but I think there's such a minute ceiling going to Daniel Tice, and I don't think people are necessarily, he's just not the most intriguing guy. He'd really have to get hot to really stay on the floor out there, but they're not going to give him more than 22, 24 minutes coming off of this shoulder injury as it is. So kind of a guy that's a product of the position where I think I'd rather just save $1 and get to Tice. I'd rather, get to Tobias Harris. I think is really intriguing for me at $32, even if you get Embiid in there. I'd much rather just be getting up to him or punting all the way down. And it's hard for me to see the run to really make him viable.
Yeah, look, I get it. And as we wind down final couple of minutes, I'm not going to let you get too much Embiid. I can't let you do it, man. Nope. Even when he's on the floor, he's not getting you anything near what his ceiling is. Why? Why would you put yourself through that?
Oh, no, but the biggest lock button play of the entire season is Montrezl Harrell. I mean, I don't know, on Yahoo at $16 for a guy we're projecting to play 36 minutes with no Daniel Gafford out there. I mean, this center rotation was kind of a disaster to figure out what was going on, how we were going to go about playing them. But Montrezl Harrell, change of scenery has done well for him here. Played 34 minutes against Indiana and didn't necessarily go for any kind of an upside there. But we saw 38 minutes here yesterday, and it's just going to be another spot where there's nobody else out there to play center minutes up against Capella, up against John Collins. So Montrezl Harrell, you could get 100% of him. And if you want to fade for ownership purposes, I could probably make that argument for just about anybody, but I'm not going to make it for Montrezl Harrell. I think it's the easiest play where you just kind of have him built into your lineups and move on with your day before you even start.
Last one to look at, and it would be somewhat a quasi pivot, but it would also be circumstantial. Joel Embiid gets ruled out. Andre Drummond, $18. You could get 22 rebounds tonight from Drummond.
Yeah, you really could. If you get no Embiid, it's going to be the two of them. We talked about it. So I do the Slate Starter podcast with Ryan Rinpack, as everybody knows him. He's really, really good at NBA DFS. And, I feel a little spoiled that, I've been friends with him for years and years, that we've been talking NBA DFS forever. And, we both just kind of talked about how it's going to be impossible to get away from some of those kind of builds where it's just Drummond and Harrell. And you're basically going to be playing 6v6 in those kind of situations on Yahoo tonight. But he's going to try to make some other stuff work. I think on the upper end, Vooch, if we're going to make the same limitation kind of argument for Zach LaVine, we got to be looking at somebody like him who can be so involved offensively. I think Mitchell Robinson isn't the most imposing guy, somebody who does try to go for a little bit too much at times, tries to be a little bit block happy. So somebody that a skilled big man like Vooch offensively can really get after it. Christian Wood in that game has some upside still against Rudy Gobert. He can at least step out and hit some jumpers, and Rudy Gobert likes to sit underneath the rim a little bit more. We all know that. And then get into Jakob Poeltl against Dallas. You have no Kristaps Porzingis in there, Dwight Powell, that entire rotating center door. Jakob Poeltl, massive game up against the Lakers in a losing effort was kind of a must-have piece alongside those Lakers pieces. He's the last guy at $24 you definitely want to have in lineups too.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate Yahoo for giving us some extra time to break down the slate here for you tonight. And again, we have two opportunities for you just below this video. The link for $10 free just to play a Yahoo contest. You have a ton now that Eric has given you for this slate tonight, the 6-game slate tonight. And then if you're a new Yahoo user, maybe you just stumbled on waiting for the actual deeper dive, which is coming up right now, then live before lock, of course, here. You don't have to go anywhere. Thinking, wow, this actually sounds fun. This sounds cool. Eric's going to win me some money. Click that link, and we're going to get you 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Thanks to Jordan. My man, it's always a pleasure, and we'll do it again next week. Right? I was giving you an opportunity to say something on the way out. If you don't want to say anything, then I'll just close the show. That's Eric Lindquist.
I'll talk way too much. We have 2 minutes. We got to go.
See ya.
Yeah, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the NBA Live. Well, it's not live before, like it is the deeper dive. See, I knew I was going to do something like that. Just got done with the Yahoo show. I was in the analyst role. Now I'm in the hosting role. Just screwing that one up off the gate. I'm Eric Lindquist. Very excited to be here with you today because especially today, we've got a special guest for you. He's the guest here every single day as the analyst, but he's special because he just got done taking down 100,000 buckaroos on DraftKings last night. Adam Scherer at My DFS. How you doing, my rich dude?
I'm doing well. It obviously feels pretty good the day after. So it's always nice too, because I mean, anybody that plays DFS is aware like how often you lose and don't win. So it's always nice to like know that you just kind of bought yourself a runway again. So it's always a good feeling.
Nothing like investing a quarter of it into NFL this weekend.
Right, exactly.
It's just going to be firing on all cylinders. But just to recap for everybody, the man took down $100,000 in the main DK tournament yesterday. How you feeling today? Was there anything specific that happened yesterday that you thought really stood out to you, or anything you really want to talk about from it?
No, not really. I mean, I talked about it this morning. I completely screwed up my lineups, and so I would have been happy just like breaking even yesterday. So I didn't really, there weren't any takeaways process wise, that's for sure. As far as the slate went, nothing really stood out. I don't think. I don't really remember anything specific.
Eytan bomb was nice.
Yeah, that was really nice.
That was
I didn't
awfully
even have
nice.
a lot. He just happened to be in the right lineup.
Hey, all it takes is one, baby. All it takes is one. Aid Baligan, I hope I'm saying that correct. $50 super chat. Thanks for helping me win the 100K on FanDuel yesterday. So we had 200K winners yesterday. What in the world? Please help me join the Discord. I've been unsuccessful trying since last night. We've got producer Jordan Klein, the best producer in the game, named Jordan Klein, bar none, I will say. Nobody else that I'd rather get drinks with on a Friday night. That's going to be incoming. Excited for such things. We're not going to have any context to that, but congratulations to you. I'm pretty sure can help you kind of get that all set up. But my God, what an absolute amazing day by Team Awesemo yesterday. So great to see. Nice to see so many guys making runs at it. I saw DeColts up there at the top. In the last couple of days, I've seen Rinpack up there. I've seen so many guys making great runs, and it was nice to see Ship My Money take one down. So cool to see. But we've got a 6-gamer to get to here. A lot of basketball to talk. So you ready to get going, my dude?
Yeah.
Let's ride. Starting off with Atlanta and Washington here. Atlanta, 2.5-point favorites going into Washington, 222.5 total. I think the story of this slate, you've got 5 pretty middling totals, and then you've got Memphis, Golden State in the evening window. Going to be pretty fascinating to see kind of where you're going to land in some of the value pieces on the early window. But let's start at the top with Trey Young. He's probable coming into tonight. He's got a ceiling, 9,400 though. Does he have a ceiling at that kind of a number on DraftKings?
Yeah, I mean, the ceiling is certainly still there. You can see Trey Young go out there and, throw up 60 DraftKings points from time to time. Obviously, the leading usage guy on the team, but also a 40+% assist percentage, should play 35 or 36 minutes, assuming this game's competitive. So the ceiling is there. I think from, a priority standpoint or a prioritization standpoint, it's tough to really, prioritize him over some of the other pay up options on this slate. But where I think Young also kind of becomes an interesting talking point is we're still waiting on some news. We're waiting on some Atlanta news with Bogdan Bogdanovic questionable, but even outside of that, we're waiting for some news from other teams. You have Jeremy Grant questionable on Detroit. If we get the less value we get, I think the more appealing Trey Young ends up looking, just because it'll make it a little bit more difficult to, jam in Curry and Luka. Maybe saving some money and going to Trey Young becomes more appealing if you have less value. If you get Jeremy Grant ruled out, you get a bunch of value opening up on the Pistons again. I think that it becomes a little bit easier to pay up. We already have Porzingis out, so we know that there's going to be value from Dallas. So I think Young looks very good. It's just a matter of I think more so in tournaments than in cash games, because I think in cash games you're probably going to be able to get up to the guys that are a tier above him.
Yeah, the boom bust tool hates Trey Young pretty much every single day. 45.4% bust percentage, 17.4% boom percentage on DraftKings here. Optimal percentage at 10%. There's negative leverage going towards him. But as you said, you're basically paying to be contrarian and to have that same kind of ceiling as what you can get from other players, and you're saving a little bit of money. So if he gets into some lineups, but yeah, definitely not going to be a priority for me either on a slate where you have Luka, you have a slate with Steph Curry, much more inclined to be getting up there as well. So I agree with you there. Moving to the rest of this basketball team, it's just kind of a no man's land a little bit with some of these pieces. I mean, Cam Reddish was somebody who had a ceiling at his number before, but now he's up to 5,100 over on DK. So hard to see myself getting to something like that. John Collins, though, 6,300 kind of becomes the other appealing piece. And Clint Capella, who I know you've talked about recently. So maybe we'll start in the front court there.
Yeah, I'm really interested in Atlanta's front court here because Washington obviously is banged up. They've been missing Thomas Bryant and Rui Hachimura all season long. Now you have Daniel Gafford out as well. So essentially you have Montrezl Harrell and then no true bigs in this Washington front court. I think you could see Clint Capella really just feast here. The issue with Capella, of course, is the playing time. You can't really confidently expect him to get more than 28 to 30 minutes, but it's a spot where I think you could see him have a lot of success on the boards, get some offensive putbacks. His usage rate is down so far this year compared to last year. Not that he's ever a high usage guy, but getting, a little bit less work offensively, but still early in the season. So not overly concerned there. And then John Collins, I think, is at a price point where he's also sort of difficult to trust from a playing time standpoint, but the salary is pretty low as a result of, for one, it just seems like he's going to play like 30 minutes in games where he's not in foul trouble, but he's also been in massive amounts of foul trouble lately. It seems like every night. So that's kept his playing time down as well. I think that if he can avoid foul trouble here, you're probably looking at around 30 minutes from him. He's someone else that I think should have a lot of success against this depleted Washington front court.
Anybody else that we're kind of looking at to try to mine something out? Nobody else is really getting any value, or any rostership other than those three at the top. DeAndre Hunter, I suppose, is a value piece on Yahoo. We talked about him for a hot second, but what's kind of your appeal there?
Yeah, I mean, Hunter's fine, sort of as just like a last piece in. The last spot that I would be paying attention to is Bogdanovich. At 5,500, he's not somebody that you can like really confidently roster, but he does have a lot of talent, and at 5,500 and 1% ownership, it wouldn't be, the worst like last piece in type play. But where I think it would really be interesting is if he sits, it opens the way for $4,500 Kevin Huerter and or $5,100 Cam Reddish to most likely step into a bigger role.
Yeah, Cam Reddish close to a fantasy point per minute on the season. Probably don't want to be paying that number for Bogdanovich. I know it's only a 4-game sample, but we're looking at 0.68 DraftKings points per minute on the season so far. That's not
a good start for him. But I mean, I don't worry too much about that. Like the rates are down, but you're still talking about 109 minutes total. Mm-hmm. We have such a large sample on Bogdanovich being a productive player. The issue with him is kind of like he doesn't, especially on a team like Atlanta that has Trey Young, he's not going to force his way into a bunch of shots. It's more so you're just going to have games from time to time where he gets hot and Atlanta looks to feed him a little bit. So it makes it difficult to predict, this is a Bogdanovich game because, who the hell knows. But if he gets hot, he'll take more shots. He's a good facilitator. So like he can do so many things well when he's on the floor that he kind of just runs into big games from time to time. But as long as everyone is healthy on Atlanta around him, you're never really going to look at him and say, oh yeah, he looks great, because he kind of just takes a backseat to Trey Young in every category.
Somebody asked about Danilo Gallinari at 4-4.
Mildly interesting to me. He played about 18 minutes last game. I think you get around 20 here. If Bogdanovich sits, maybe guys slide up and Gallo gets a few more minutes at the 3. But I'm assuming he gets around 20 minutes. It's a situation where he's certainly capable of just shooting the lights out over 20 minutes against what I expect to be a poor Washington defense this year. But it's not any sort of priority for me. Like, it's not somebody I would play in single entry or 3 max across 150 lineups. I'm sure I'll have a little bit, but nothing that really stands out.
All right, let's jump over to the Washington side because, oh boy, Montrezl Harrell. We've been wondering about this center rotation between him and Gafford. I know that there was some concern. I mean, Gafford, I think a little bit down. Russell Westbrook, one of the best guys at just getting to the bucket, period. We're seeing DeAndre Jordan. We're seeing Dwight Howard be effective at the rim with Russell Westbrook being added to the fray in Los Angeles. Just somebody that can get there and throw lobs and have fun. Daniel Gafford, I think, was in that mold. And Spencer Dinwiddie, Bradley Beal, not going to be creating for him. But now we don't even have to talk about him because he's listed out and we've got all the Montrezl Harrell in the world popping at the top here. 5,300 over on DraftKings. We've got him at 5,600 over on FanDuel, where you can play him at power forward as well. How much Montrezl Harrell on this slate is too much Montrezl Harrell?
I mean, I don't really think that there's an amount. Like, I'm not saying you have to play Harrell in every single tournament lineup. That's really never the case with anybody. But I really wouldn't be upset if that happens for me. Like, he's getting a ton of ownership in it. And so I understand you can certainly whenever somebody's getting 60+% ownership, right now we have them at 63% on DraftKings. You can always make a coherent case to say it's still, basketball. There is still variance. He can get in foul trouble, he can get hurt, he can play poorly. Like, there's still ways that you benefit from not having him. But typically for me, in a spot like this where it's just a completely mispriced player given a change in role, I am more willing to just jam him in and then figure out the rest. In other sports like baseball and football, there's just so much more volatility that you're still a lot more, I think, ownership sensitive. Whereas here, it's just like I kind of tried to project Harrell like as low as I reasonably could, and he still projects like 7x. So it's just, the minutes should be there. He played 24 of the final 27 minutes of yesterday's game, ended up playing 38 minutes. I think, that would be a really ambitious projection if you think he's playing 38 minutes again. But even if you think he's playing around 32, he's a 1.15 DraftKings points per minute guy over the last 3 seasons. He's at 1.1 DraftKings points per minute this year. That would just still, on average, make him a very, very good option at this price point. So I'm more inclined to just figure out how to be contrarian elsewhere. I will say, if you play cash against somebody without Montrezl Harrell today, and they don't have Harrell, get as much action against them in the future as you can.
Infinity action. That sounds like I'm not even going to say his name because I don't want to get trolled on the world, but we all know who I'm talking about. 8.2 value score. I mean, it's just it's the best value play I think that we've had of this entire season, and I don't think it's remotely close. Could he fail? Sure, but a lot of people can fail in sports by a lot of random things happening, and it doesn't mean that mathematically we should be just fading for the sake of fading. I'm going to have all of it in the world. I'd be surprised if I didn't have 100% today, but let's move on to the rest of this team. Spencer Dinwiddie, somebody who hasn't necessarily been the kind of guy that I was hoping he would be here in this spot. Bradley Beal, Kyle Kuzma. We have a number of different options, not really gaining any ownership besides Kyle Kuzma over on DraftKings. Where are you kind of looking at for the rest of this Washington team?
Yeah, the rest of the team's not nearly as appealing because it's not like Gafford's a high usage player or anything that's leaving the lineup. I think that you probably see a positive bump for Kyle Kuzma, but I also don't really know how much better he can be because he already has an 18% rebound percentage this year. I think, it's a spot where you could get some time where Kuzma's at the 5, he's getting rebound opportunities, but he's already gotten them this year. So I think Kuzma's fine. I think that 6,200 is reasonable for him. Obviously, if you get to some Bradley Beal, that's okay. But Dinwiddie, it's still tough to get to Dinwiddie at 7,200. He played 30 minutes last night. I don't think it's particularly likely he plays a bunch more minutes tonight on the second half of a back-to-back. KCP at 3,900, if you want to roll the dice there and hope he gets hot, that's okay, but it's not anything I'm excited about. I think doing the same thing with Davis Bertans is okay. There could potentially be more minutes available for him, especially if he's knocking down shots, but he's also just been terrible at basketball for going on over a year now, where he's never done a whole lot in terms of rebounding or assists, but now he doesn't shoot. When he does shoot, he doesn't shoot well. So it's a problem. I don't really see a whole lot else from Washington. I do think, and I mentioned this in the deep dive article, if you're someone going in and just you, for one reason or another, just are refusing to play Montrezl Harrell, I do think you probably should be bumping up Kyle Kuzma and Davis Bertans because the easiest way for Montrezl Harrell to fail is for Washington to just play small lineups for a lot of this game, a lot more than we're anticipating. And if that's the case, you are getting more rebound opportunities for Kuzma. You're probably getting more run for Bertans than I'm expecting. So again, I would rather just play Montrezl Harrell, but I think that if you're going to not play him, just go all the way and project this as if Washington still only plays Harrell 28 minutes and then gives plays a bunch of small lineups with, Bertans getting more minutes.
Yeah. Or foul trouble. I mean, you can make the foul trouble argument for anybody.
Yeah. One other thing with Harrell to point out, because I saw it mentioned in chat that his usage could drop playing more minutes. That's the right thought process. That is typically what happens. But somebody with Harrell, he's not dependent on usage. He's not a high usage guy anyway. He's getting there on rebounds and efficiency. So it's not as big a deal. It's not like a scoring 2-guard coming off of the bench and now starting alongside a ball dominant point guard. That's where stuff like that becomes really, harmful to their production when you're just slotting in a center that is going to rebound, get putbacks, and operate in the pick and roll. It's not going to be much of a detriment.
Anything else from this game for you?
No.
Okay, perfect. Well, we've got 1.5K people in here. I need you all to hit the like button for me right now. I'm already getting made fun of constantly on every single stream. Everybody at Awesemo makes fun of me in the Slack chats. You don't even know the kind of embarrassment that I get already. So I need you to hit the like button for me. That way I can continue to actually exist and smile. Otherwise I just get sad, and I don't want to get sad. Plus, we also have some great deals going on, and it goes a long way to just be able to keep doing this free content in front of the paywall. One of those deals we have going is the $29.95 Awesemo weekly pass right now, and you'll get 25% off of it with the promo code NBA Deeper Dive. That is all caps, one word, NBA Deeper Dive. Get 25% off your first week of Awesemo Plus Platinum. And then it's only $16.95 if you want to check out the NBA weekly package, or $4.95 for the express package. Get everything behind the paywall, though. Go get that 25% offer. Check out the player projections, the ownership projections, the boom bust tool. I refer to that all the time on these streams. It makes my life so much easier trying to build tournament lineups. If you don't have a ton of time after work, if you are in a rush for anything, the NBA Boom Bust tool can do so much of the heavy lifting, show you who's going a little bit over-owned, under-owned, who has a really good chance of going nuts on this slate. I'm telling you, it is such a fast and efficient way to build lineups. So check out all the tools we have behind the paywall. Stop guessing, start winning. Join Awesemo Plus today, and that's NBA Deeper Dive for 25% off. All right, next game on the slate we have going is Detroit. They're 10.5 point dogs going into Philadelphia, 212, a low paltry 212 total here in this one. Starting on the Detroit side, as you were kind of referred to, we're looking, Jeremy Grant's good to go, right? Is he ruled in? I just saw the thing. Nope, it's still sitting there. We don't have exact word on that yet here, but that would change a lot of this slate for me. But as it stands right now, assuming that he's in, what are you seeing from the Detroit side?
So, we just got that he's still a game time decision. I'm assuming he's out because he missed last game. He didn't practice, but it's also the first game one of the first games on the slate. So we'll have that information anyway. If Grant's in, I think Grant is fine at 6,600. Not a priority for me, but a reasonable price tag given the usage that he gets. But it would knock down Kelly Olynyk. It would knock down Josh Jackson a little bit in terms of usage playing alongside Grant. It would potentially hurt Sadiq Bey a bit. If Grant's out, I think it opens up a lot because you'll probably get Kelly Olynyk starting again. He's only 5,800 on DraftKings. We saw last year that when he gets minutes on a team that really doesn't have high usage, ball dominant guys, he can do a lot of different things on the floor. He can rebound, he can score, he can make plays. We saw him just put up fantastic fantasy numbers with Houston. And I think this is kind of a similar roster where there's nothing really stopping him from taking on a big offensive role. He was productive in his start the other day, played about 30 minutes. I'd expect him to play around 30 minutes again here at 5,800. So I would like him a lot if Grant sits. And then Josh Jackson is a spot that we're definitely going to need to pay attention to because he was inserted into the starting lineup last game. Didn't have anything to do with Jeremy Grant being out. He replaced Frank Jackson, but if he starts again, he's only 4,700. He's been around the fantasy point per minute guy for his entire career. Like, he's one of these guys that he's a much better DFS player than real life player. He's, for all intents and purposes, been a bust as number 3 overall pick, but he's always been relatively productive from a fantasy standpoint. He played 32 minutes last game. If he's going to play 30 to 32 minutes at 4,700, he's going to look like one of the best values. And conversely, if Frank Jackson goes back into the starting lineup, you're not going to be nearly as excited about Frank Jackson as you are about Josh Jackson, since he's not the same level of fantasy producer, but you would be getting a $3,600 player that's likely to play 26 minutes and at least be a reasonable point per dollar value. So whoever starts out of those two is going to be relatively appealing. If it's Josh Jackson, I think very appealing.
Why is Killian Hayes so bad?
I don't know.
I don't either. I thought he was going to actually be good in the NBA, and Ryan brought him up yesterday as well in the Slate Starter Pod, and he tried to defend Killian Hayes in some way. I don't know what. Is there any interest at 4K in the event that you don't have Jeremy Grant out there? We did see 27 minutes for him last time out. Maybe there can be a ceiling on 4K. Any interest whatsoever?
There's interest in the sense that he's 4K and can play 27, 28 minutes, but there's nothing that I can point to and say, like, yeah, this is why I think Killian Hayes is going to have a good game. I don't know that those words are ever going to come out of my mouth at this point. Going back to last year, he's averaged 0.75 DraftKings points per minute. So far this year, he's at 0.61 DraftKings points per minute. It would certainly be very difficult to be confident in him or get excited about him.
Okay, let's go to the Philly side then, if you're ready to.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. We're talking about Joel Embiid and Shake Milton being questionable, and sure enough, they are game time decisions for Thursday. That news alert just hit the wire here, so we are just kind of waiting on some of this news because it could drastically change the complexion of the slate. Let's talk about it as if they are both in for the moment, and then we can kind of adjust from there. But on the top end, Joel Embiid on the season so far, 1.4 DraftKings points per minute. I mean, we know kind of that he's one of the better fantasy point per minute producers, but hasn't really been extended past the 33-minute threshold at any point in time. Difficult. I guess they have Andre Drummond there where they do want to give him some of that backup run. He's playing the Dwight Howard role in this spot, maybe even a little bit better in the early going. But what are you kind of seeing with Philadelphia?
Yeah, so we have Embiid as a game time decision. As usual, I'm assuming he plays until I hear otherwise. The presence of Drummond does make it difficult to project Embiid for more than like 31 or 32 minutes, just because, you see it a lot when you have an actual quality backup. Typically, someone like Andre Drummond isn't going to just play like 10 or 11 minutes. He's typically going to get his 15 to 16, but you've also seen a decrease in salary for Embiid. So I think that is important to note. And he hasn't been great this year. He's not producing at the same level that we've seen in the past, but he's still averaging 1.4 DraftKings points per minute, which is still solid production. His usage rate is only at 29.1%, which is down a bit from last year. Since the start of last season, with Tobias Harris on the floor and with Simmons off, he has about a 38% usage rate. So you've seen a huge drop in his usage, but you're still talking about 29 to 30%. The biggest thing that I'm actually concerned about with Embiid is his rebounding rate is down, but also his rebound chances per game. He is averaging about 6 less rebound chances per game or per 36 minutes this year than he did last year. And then on the other side, Tobias Harris is averaging 4 more rebound chances per 36 minutes. So the reason that's concerning to me is, it could be a small sample size thing, but also a lot of times when you see something like that, it ends up that it's, a schematic thing. And that for one reason or another, whether it's they would rather Harris get the rebound to, push the break, or you would rather Embiid box out and then Harris grab the ball. Just like, like people have said forever, like DFS people, that Brook Lopez is a bad rebounder, when really Brook Lopez just doesn't care about actually catching the ball. He blocks his guy out and then someone else gets it. So whatever it is, like it's something where that does concern me. Just you've seen this huge flip where Tobias Harris is actually getting more opportunities. So that's a little bit concerning, but all of that is still mostly offset by the fact that he's down to $9,800. So I still think he looks very good.
All right. And then going to the rest of this entire team, I mean, this backcourt has just been a little bit underwhelming. I would say Shake Milton, Tyrese Maxey, one of the more underwhelming plays here in recent weeks here. The last 3 games has failed to go over 24 fantasy points, and he continues to be somebody who pops in projections. He's coming with the most ownership on this entire team over on the DraftKings slate. How much of him are you getting to on this slate?
How much
Tyrese Maxey would you be looking at? Because he's just kind of unappealing to me.
Yeah, I don't think I get a lot. I do think that the status of Shake Milton ends up mattering. I'm assuming that Maxey would stay in the starting lineup, but I think he probably does lose a couple of minutes if Milton's able to play. If Milton is out, then I'm fine, expecting another like 34 minutes from Maxey. He's been okay this year, but he's playing the bulk of his minutes alongside Harris and Embiid, and that just leads to lower usage, fewer assist opportunities. Josh pointed out this morning he did run with the second unit in the first half last game. That's an encouraging sign. I'm not reading too much into it yet, because that hasn't been the case for most of the year. But if they were to keep doing that, that would make him look better. But as is, it's kind of just a guy that's there. Like if Milton's out and you're expecting 33, 34 minutes, he's okay, but not anything that I'm prioritizing. If Milton's in, I think he becomes a little bit riskier, because I think it becomes relatively likely that you get like 30, 31 minutes out of him and lose a little bit. So certainly not a priority for me. If he ends up in some lineups, that's fine, but I don't really feel strongly about him.
All right. I just got something from New Scott. Always looking out for us. He said Doc Rivers says he likes Tyrese Maxey with second unit lineups. Maxey got more minutes there on Tuesday night after Doc tweaked the rotation. Anything to kind of mine out of that? Who did send that? That was, I guess, just kind of citing the source is probably an okay thing to do as we're at it too. Adam Aronson, he's a Sixers beat reporter. So I think that's kind of a legitimate deal. Yeah. Staff writer. So that's something to pay attention to, I suppose.
Yeah, it's good to hear that Doc had an actual reason for doing that, and it wasn't just like a random thing. Because I mean, like for the example that I thought of this morning was like I got really excited about Will Barton earlier in the year. Like game 1, he ran with the second unit in the second half, did really, really well, and I was like, oh cool, we're gonna get like good Will Barton production this year, and then he just stopped doing it. So it's good. I assume that you'll get some more of Maxey with the second unit. I'm still kind of curious what the rotations end up looking like if Milton's back, but it does make his production look a little bit better.
Hey, Adam, Spencer Dinwiddie just got ruled out.
Awesome. Howell Neto, I guess.
It's Howell Neto season, baby. I'm so excited. So 4K Howell Neto, obviously that news just hit the wire. I don't even see it in chat here right now. That's usually strange. But I have my sources. That is 100% verified. He's on rest. So no Spencer Dinwiddie. Taking him off the slate adds a lot of value to this Washington side. What's your first impressions of that news?
So I'm interested to see if we get Aaron Holiday or Howell Neto starting. Neto missed yesterday's game, but he's not on the injury report today. He's been the backup to Dinwiddie, so I'm assuming that he starts. And if he does, he's going to look like a pretty solid option. I'm going to try and pull up the rates now for what he did with Beal last year. But at 4K, I think he ends up looking like a very good value here. You probably also get a little bit more run for Aaron Holiday. You probably get a bit more playmaking and usage for Bradley Beal, because Neto is not a high usage guy. Aaron Holiday is not a high usage guy. So I think this is a bump for Beal. Like you saw, obviously Russell Westbrook takes on a bigger role than Spencer Dinwiddie, but Dinwiddie is still, the second piece offensively, and there's nobody really close. Like it's clearly Dinwiddie is the number 2 guy. He's the number 1 guy in terms of assist opportunities. I think you see both. I think you see more shots and more assist opportunities funneled to Beal. So I think it's a bump for him and makes him look a lot better as well.
Love that. I enjoy this because this is the first kind of like surprise out of nowhere scratch that we've had for a main player on any of these main slates in a long time. It feels like, or maybe the entire season, but I digress. We're back to Philadelphia. Anything else to kind of round out that game?
Andre Drummond in tournaments, I think, is kind of interesting, just as one of those plays where like you understand it's not going to work out all that often, but when it does, it can pay you off very, very well. Backup centers in general are typically kind of interesting guys because it's the position where the starter is the most foul prone. But in Drummond's case, you have somebody that produces at a very high rate when he's on the floor. He's 4,900. So if he plays his 15 minutes, he's probably not going to do anything that you're really excited about. But if for any number of reasons he happens to get 18 to 20 minutes instead of 15 or 16, he could pretty easily pay off that salary at low ownership. So interested there. I like Harris. Like he's produced really, really well this year, but he's also gotten extremely expensive on DraftKings. So I think it's tough to get to a lot of him. I just pulled up, for what it's worth, I pulled up Washington's numbers. 522 minutes. Neto and Beal have shared the floor without Dinwiddie or Westbrook since the start of last season. 1.38 DraftKings points per minute with a 38.7% usage rate and a 30.7% assist percentage for Beal. So just extremely good production there. And then Neto at 0.86 DraftKings points per minute, 15.8% usage rate, 16.9% assist percentage. Good production for a 4K guy that could push 28 to 30 minutes if he's healthy.
Love that play. Yeah, he's going to be a big part of Build's big conversation piece. And of course, stick around for the Live Before Lock show that's coming up after us. That's going to be Greg and Mr. LaMarca. They're a great combination. Guys who have worked together before, you can tell. They're going to give you a bunch of great analysis. So looking forward to that as well. Let's jump ourselves. Well, actually, let's talk Yahoo quick. So we talked Yahoo for the 30 minutes pre-show. They are the sponsor here of the Deeper Dive and the Live Before Lock show. We've absolutely loved partnering with them here because they have some of the best, cheapest management fees you'll have around the entire industry. So right around 10% for a lot of their NBA stuff. I mean, that is much, much lower than you'll find on the main sites. And we have the promotion going with them where you get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum with your first deposit as a new user. You simply deposit $10 or more. You enter any paid contest and you will get 1 free month. That's a month of Awesemo Plus Platinum completely free. Every single sport we offer behind the paywall. If you want that Week 8 NFL content, we got you covered simply by using this promotion and a new user. There's no reason not to go play in that. They have the best tournament, and I do mean the best NFL tournament to play in. That spooky Week 8 contest, $1 million, 200,000 guaranteed overlay. It doesn't get any better than that. This promotion is worth it. Simply go there, put a couple lineups in, get that free month of Awesemo Plus, and I promise you, it'll be a better endeavor than you'll have anywhere else across the entire industry for NFL Sunday. So take advantage of it now. And thank you so much to Yahoo. I've absolutely loved being able to play over there, and I know you will too. All right, we got 4 games to get to here. Utah -9.5 at Houston, 222.5 total that we're looking at here. I'm telling you, like this Utah team, it's just kind of the same situation where they're going to have some of these blowouts, and it takes some of the luster off of playing a guy like Donovan Mitchell. But in tournaments, we haven't really necessarily seen him go completely berserk yet. We saw so many spots where he was playing a ton of minutes in the postseason, pushing next to 40 and putting up 60 burgers, and it hasn't been there. But now the ownership is creeping down to around 7% that we're looking at 8,900. I mean, it's a super contrarian kind of spot, but do you have any interest getting up to him on this slate?
I think what you're saying makes sense. Like in tournaments, as long as he's low owned, he's still really talented. It's a good matchup for him against Houston. If this game goes down to the wire and you get like 35 minutes from Donovan Mitchell, he can certainly give you a good performance. I do think his stock goes down a little bit now that we have Dinwiddie out, because it just makes Bradley Beal look a lot better. So you have Beal at like $300 more. Coming into the show, I kind of thought they were really similar in the sense that neither one looks like a top play, but they're both more than capable of scoring like 50 raw points or 50, like actual points. But now when you take out Dinwiddie, it bumps Beal, I think, ahead of Mitchell. So it makes it a little bit more difficult for me to get there. But Utah in general is just kind of like that, where you do have Bojan Bogdanovic questionable. So if he's out, it can open up minutes for Ingles and Clarkson. But assuming he's in, it's just like a team where they are all priced about where they should be. None of them are bad plays. None of them are great plays. You have seen Mike Conley's assist numbers come down a little bit this year. Mitchell actually is averaging more potential assists per game so far, which he plays more minutes too, but last year there was still a gap between them. So that's not great for Conley, but still at 5,900, if you're getting 29 minutes from him against Houston, that's okay. Gobert, I think, looks pretty good. Like he should be able to have success here. So I like the Utah guys. There's just not any one of them that really stands out to me if everyone's healthy.
Yeah, if you get Bogdanovic out, I think Joe Ingles does become pretty darn interesting. Somebody that we can see that assist rate go up. We can see him get a little bit more involved in that spot, pick up some more of those minutes. And Jordan Clarkson, we haven't seen it. 5,600 still a little bit expensive for him over on the DK side of things. I believe 5,100 though on FanDuel. Then you're kind of creeping into that territory where you could find a ceiling on that. That's the importance of playing multiple sites, including Yahoo, including FanDuel, but just kind of play them all. Unless you're Adam, just go to DraftKings and murder everybody. What a great life you are living. Rudy Gobert, any interest there though?
Yeah, for sure. He's actually been insanely good this year as well.
Yeah.
I don't totally buy into it because it's a small sample this year. It's the exact same team that he's been on for years, and he has a 23% usage rate so far. I don't think he's suddenly a 23% usage guy. If he is, my God, he's going to have a good fantasy year. But even with the, even using his rates from previous seasons, he projects well here. You're probably getting 33 or 34 minutes if this game's competitive. I think he looks like a good option. Again, not somebody that I'm expecting to jam into a ton of lineups, especially when you have Montrezl Harrell taking up a center position in most lineups, at least for me. But I like Gobert's ceiling. I think Gobert looks good. Definitely in that same similar bucket as Donovan Mitchell.
All right, we got news that Bogdanovic and Lou Williams are warming up, and there'll be game time decisions. That's what we'll have the Live Before Lock crew kind of covering, all of that last second breaking news. If something's officially going to drop here, I obviously will get right to that, but let's keep it moving. We've got the Houston side here as well. I don't really know what I want to do here outside of Christian Wood over on DraftKings. Jayshawn Tate, I guess, would be an all right source of value, 4,800, but getting close to 15% value. We'll kind of see where this Washington value and how it affects lineups. But what are you seeing at the top end here of the Houston guys?
Yeah, I mean, this team scares the hell out of me because I think it's just going to be a long year with Houston from a DFS standpoint, because they're running pretty tight rotations where the guys that you would want to play a lot of minutes are playing a lot of minutes. So they're appealing, but at the same time, they're a really bad team, and there's always a lot of things that can go wrong here. Clearly, it's a tough matchup with Utah. But I do think Christian Wood looks pretty good at his price tag. I'm not quite as concerned about the matchup for him as I would be for some other guys. People always bring up Rudy Gobert's defense, but I don't really care all that much when you're talking about guys that can stretch the floor. Christian Wood averaging 5.5 3-point attempts per game this season. It's not like he's reliant on scoring at the rim where Gobert can really be a problem. So as a team, Utah's still a good defensive team. You're not looking at it saying, oh, I'm so glad that he's going up against Utah, but I just don't think that Gobert is as concerning as he would be for some other guys. I am interested in Kevin Porter. He's only 8% owned on DraftKings right now, $6,700 price tag. He lost some playing time last game because of foul trouble, but he's always a really high upside player. We've seen him play 36 to 37 minutes in competitive games. He's giving you an ownership discount and the salary discount off of Christian Wood. So I think that he's an interesting piece. Jalen Green, Jayshawn Tate, I think both fine, but they do move down the list a little bit, like you were saying, with more value opening up from Washington.
Kevin Porter Jr., 5,900 on FanDuel, one of my favorite plays over there of the entire day. No question about it. Going to be somebody I'm going to be getting to quite a bit over there. Looking at the rest of the board, anything else to really touch on from Houston? As you said, it's just a terrifying team.
Yeah, not much else there. You mentioned Jayshawn Tate, 4,800. I guess it is important to note for the season, he's averaging like 28 minutes per game, but that's extremely misleading. Houston's played 4 games. 2 of them were blowouts. One of them, Tate was in foul trouble. The only game he's played in that was competitive where he wasn't in foul trouble, he played 35 and a half minutes, just like every other starter except Daniel Tice on Houston does. So I do think that just from a minutes to salary standpoint, he looks pretty good on DraftKings, but he's also not a super productive player.
Correct. Going to the Knicks, we got -1.5. This is the game I'm probably looking forward to the most. See if Chicago can really be a thing here. 216 total here in this one going into Chicago. The return to Thibodeau to his native team here. It's going to be really, really fun and entertaining. I do look forward to this game, but every conversation you have about the Knicks starts, and it doesn't necessarily end, but most of the time it ends for me with Julius Randle. What are you kind of doing as far as prioritizing him on this slate?
So I think he's another one that indirectly gets hurt by Dinwiddie being out, because not that he's the same position as Beal, but he's the same price range. And I think it just moves Beal ahead, but you're still expecting 36 to 37 minutes from Julius Randle. He's been extremely productive this year, over 1.4 DraftKings points per minute so far. I think that the per minute production comes down as the year goes on, but the rates are still where you would like them to be. They're pretty much where they were last year. So he's not being negatively impacted by changes that the Knicks made in the offseason. So I still think Randle looks good, but I think just very difficult to prioritize him when I like Beal more in that price range now. And then I also still would prefer to be getting up to Luka, Curry. I think Embiid's pretty comparable to Randle as well.
Yeah, it's just going to be a weird team to be getting to. RJ Barrett, I suppose, at 5,500. He's pulling a lot of ownership though here too. I was talking on the previous show where I kind of expect a little bit of the usage to trail up for all these guys. RJ Barrett, Evan Fournier. We started to see Kemba Walker finally get involved after an abysmal start to his season. But these ancillary Knicks pieces, what are your interest level in each of them?
Pretty mild. I think that there's several of them you can make the case as like a last piece in, but there's nobody I feel super confident in. RJ Barrett's playing time is okay for his price, but the usage is down this year. And I think that can at least partly be attributed to Evan Fournier. Like you're replacing Reggie Bullock in the lineup with Evan Fournier. And even though Fournier only has a 21% usage rate this year, that's still quite a bit higher than Bullock had last year. So I think, Barrett's still going to have his games. He still gets his opportunities, but I don't feel super confident there. Same can be said for Kemba and Rose. We had talked about it before Kemba's game last time out where he went out and had a good game, but it's kind of just going to be the same thing going, over and over again, where at $5,400 on average, Kemba's just mediocre because there's going to be games where he doesn't play that well. There's going to be games where he loses playing time to Derrick Rose, but then there's also going to be games where he does play well and he gets those closing minutes and plays 28 minutes or something, and can give you really solid production. Same thing can be said about Derrick Rose. Like there's going to be some games where he plays 20 minutes. There's going to be some games where he plays 28. Normally, if he plays 28, it's safe to assume that he's playing pretty well. So they both make sense in tournaments. I think at low exposures, but nothing that I feel super confident in. Throw Mitchell Robinson in there as well. Like I guess if you're a crazy person not playing Harrell, Robinson would be one of the guys that you look at like, oh, he's the same price. He can beat Harrell at much lower ownership, and that's true. I also have him projected like 10 points lower, so yeah, I don't think it's super likely. But if you're somebody that just refuses to play Harrell, then Robinson is one of the guys in that price range you could use.
I can't remember the last time I saw 70% optimal on like a game there wasn't a 2-game slate.
Right.
And this is a 6-game slate, and you're looking at Montrezl Harrell with a 70% optimal rate, ownership at 63% on DK. I mean, it's so hard to want to make that kind of a pivot. I mean, you could play Mitchell Robinson in addition to him on DraftKings, but definitely going to be still with you where it's like, yeah, a 10-point difference. Just give me all of the Harrell every single time. Anything else from the Knicks?
No, just a bunch of guys that look fine, but that I don't really feel strongly about.
Yeah, I don't even want to make a case for RJ Barrett. I'm sure I'll get 1 or 2 shares of him amongst 150. I'll get a couple, probably more than that, but I'm not enthusiastic about this team. Even
they just all project like, sorry, they just all project like right around 5x for me, where it's just like, yeah, they're priced about where they should be. You can kind of just play roulette and hope one of them pops off. But there's a lot of good plays on the slate, and none of them really jump out.
Adam, you can interrupt me whenever the hell you want. I do not matter. You do not exist. That is what it is. The Hangover. What a great movie. All right. We're going to Chicago. We've got Vooch. We've got DeMar DeRozan. We've got Lonzo Ball. But of course, Zach LaVine, if he's dinged up, I mean, what are your concern levels? It's a non-shooting hand for this injury for him with this thumb. Are you going to kind of be giving everybody else a little bit of a bump, thinking they might take some more offensive responsibilities?
For now, I'm assuming that it's kind of status quo. I always think this is like one of the hardest things for NBA DFS is trying to gauge, especially the first time, like you can't even look at, potential assists or usage or anything like that. Trying to gauge how a kind of like random injury is going to impact guys. I think it's really, really difficult to quantify. I'd be more willing to, take production away from LaVine if it was on his shooting hand. I think he also would be a lot less likely to be playing if it was on his shooting hand. But it's one of those, like, I don't think if he suits up and he plays, the assumption from the coaching staff, the training staff, and him is that he can play at a high level. So, it's not, they're not running him out there to play at like 60% or something. It's his non-shooting hand. I'm sure it'll be an annoyance for him. I just don't really know that it's going to have a huge negative impact on him in DFS. If we go back and look at this game, tomorrow, and it's like, oh, Zach LaVine handled the ball like 50% of the, 50% fewer than he used to, then it's just like, okay, maybe they're changing things up. But for now, I'm pretty much just treating it as status quo.
Well, the reason I ask is because it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, it looks like the ownership on both DraftKings and FanDuel are indicative of a limited Zach LaVine. We're looking at LaVine at 3.6% on FanDuel as opposed to DeRozan, 25.6%, Lonzo Ball, 19.2%, Vooch, 13.9%, and going to the DraftKings slate, Zach LaVine, sub 3%, Vooch, 15%, right around that number, DeMar DeRozan, the same, Lonzo Ball, 11%. I mean, it looks to me as though people are factoring that in, no?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one possible explanation. I think also it's like he's at a different price point than Lonzo and DeRozan, same price point as Vooch, but different position. So I think it could also just be sort of difficult to get to him. But I mean, I think naturally when somebody's banged up, you're typically going to get at least a little bit lower ownership because people just don't want to take the risk.
All right. Can you kind of prioritize the rest of those guys for me? DeRozan,
no,
Ball,
really.
Vooch, anybody? No, you don't want to.
No. I mean, it's like literally, so like in my projections, like, they're color coded, like the better they are, the greener they get, the worse they are, the redder they get. Vooch, LaVine, DeRozan, Ball are all just white. Like they're just like where they should be. So it's kind of just and I think this will be the case for me with Chicago in a lot of these games. It's going to be really difficult to pinpoint any one game and say, this is the one DeRozan does well. This is the one LaVine does well. So ownership plays a pretty big role. For example, if our ownership continues to project Zach LaVine much lower than these other guys, I'm going to like Zach LaVine a little bit more than these other guys because I think the chances of success are pretty comparable. Vucevic now at 14%. That's come up a little bit from earlier. It puts him, I think, about the same as Christian Wood. I think that's correct. This morning we had twice as much ownership going to Christian Wood, so I really liked Vooch in tournaments. Now it's equal, and I think that's fine. I still think Vooch is a good play, but it's kind of, I don't really see myself taking any sort of crazy stand on any of these guys. I think I just get around the field. The exception being that if LaVine really is 3% owned, I wouldn't be surprised if I have more than that, just because he's a high upside, very, very low owned guy.
So your favorite play from the Bulls at current ownership?
At current ownership, yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, we got the Hall of Fame segment. And I don't know if you guys heard already. There's a 100K winner on this panel. And I mean, it's not me. So there you go. That kind of gives you a little bit of a clue. But we have the Hall of Fame segment. Basically, all you need to do for this is you fire it up. You finish in the top 3 of a 5,000 entry contest. You download this Awesemo profile pic. You make sure that that's in the picture for it. You tweet at the Awesemo HOF, and you get that free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. So you win, and then you win again. That's a double win. That's as good as it gets. Ship My Money, gonna get that free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Congratulations to him. Well done, my dude. Such a good lineup. The DeAndre Ayton smash. Josh Giddey was the man. Devontae Graham, I thought, was super sharp. Everything about this lineup looks really, really nice. Congratulations. couldn't have happened to a more mediocre person in a million years. So love it. Going next on the board here. It's just kind of waiting to go for me here. We've got Steve Buzzard. It's T.O. Deck. Nice lineup. They ended up splitting there at the top, a little over $3,000. That's awfully nice. Says, let's share a bigger one next time. You know what? $3,000 ain't too bad of a day's work. So congratulations to you. Well done there. And then next up here, we've got, the NBA Mini Max. What a great little tournament for everybody to be jumping in. MJilk24, number 1, number 4. That's a nice little payday. A good little ROI on that one as well. So cool to be able to see subs at number of different stakes levels, whether that's the massive $10, $15 tournaments, if it's the $4 on FanDuel, or this, we've got the $15 fadeaway, which is the single game showdown contest. We've got Christopher up there, all trick and no treat tonight with the Spooky Showdown series. Congratulations on a nice nearly 6-figure score on a $95 of entries. Doesn't get a whole lot better than that. So everybody, tweet your wins to the @Awesemo HOF. I absolutely love being able to do this. I didn't know it was going to be so enjoyable working here at Awesemo to see people succeed, but that's really what it is. This is a community that we've built up here. We got Spoofer. Thanks to Fantasy Cruncher for the success. 24K plus smash, and Death Flower with the MMA takedown. 756 of entries, 106K. Man, what a smash. Everybody at Awesemo, keep it up. Looking forward to be able to join you guys on these screenshots here soon. Maybe tonight. You never know. You never know. All right, we got 2 games to go here. 11 minutes. Perfect timing. We've got the Spurs +6 at Dallas 220. Starting on the Spurs side, they ended up having a really entertaining game against the Lakers, and we saw some super ceilings from the likes of DeJounte Murray and Jakob Poeltl there, but they aren't the ones getting the ownership because it is the value pieces. Devin Vassell, or Vassell, however you want to say that, Keldon Johnson, Derek White, all getting a ton of rostership here on the top end on DraftKings. What are you kind of seeing with this Spurs team?
Yeah, I think this is some of the better value. You have Doug McDermott out, and you already had solid roles for Lonnie Walker and Devin Vassell. Now with McDermott out, you assume they get more playing time. They're relatively inexpensive. I assume that their ownership comes down a little bit now that you have Neto opening up for Washington, but they still look like pretty solid values. They're both producing well this year. Lonnie Walker in particular, over a fantasy point per minute so far. I doubt that continues just because we have a pretty long track record now of him being like a 3/4 of a fantasy point per minute guy. But assuming that he's going to play 30 to 32 minutes, I assume Vassell is going to play 28-ish minutes. They both project as good values. The only kind of concern for me is I still just have no feel for what is going on with Thaddeus Young. We haven't seen him in the rotation. He played like 3 minutes yesterday. It feels like there's going to be one game where he just shows up and it's just like, oh, Thaddeus Young is now playing. And that would obviously be bad. But at the same time, I don't think it's that concerning anyway for Walker and Vassell in particular, because you have Keita Bates-Diop playing a ton of minutes also. I would assume that if Young just appears, he takes minutes from Bates-Diop before he takes them from Walker and Vassell. So it makes me think that they're still pretty much locked into solid roles here.
It's so weird because he was so good at the tail end of his Chicago career. Yeah, and now he's not on the floor.
Yeah, it's weird. And it's just funny. Like when they played the Lakers the other day, I was talking to Josh, and Josh is, if the Lakers go small, like, do you think this ends up being like a Thaddeus Young spot? And I was like, well, yes, except for everything should be a Thaddeus Young spot on this team. Like he should be playing, pretty big minutes. So it's weird. I mean, I'm assuming he doesn't play substantial minutes today. I think I have him in for like 10 or something like that. But again, I think that either way, Walker and Vassell should be fine. I would assume that Bates-Diop's minutes are the ones that could go to Thaddeus Young if he were to suddenly be a rotation piece.
What useless minutes those are. I don't even want to talk about them because it's disgusting. 7,100 Jakob Poeltl on DraftKings. No thanks. A little bit better play, I think, over on the likes of Yahoo, our sponsor, and then just under 5% on FanDuel. We know the ceiling is there. We literally just saw it, but who is kind of your favorite piece of value from the Spurs side on DraftKings?
I think it's really close between Walker and Vassell. They both, relative to salary, look pretty similar to me. But I think there's other, like the mid-range pieces look pretty good too. Keldon Johnson coming off of a really, really poor performance last time out, but he leads the team with a 26.5% usage rate this year. You've seen that just really skyrocket from last year. You can expect around 30 minutes from him, barring foul trouble. So I still think he looks good. Derek White, I think, is someone I haven't been playing a lot of so far this year because he just keeps being priced really close to DeJounte Murray. But now DeJounte Murray's price tag just rocketed up to 8,800 on DraftKings. So I think it makes Derek White look a little bit better, just relatively. He's been a fantasy point per minute guy. You can expect 32, 33 minutes from him. And then even Jakob Poeltl, who I think there's some sticker shock on him at 7,100 on DraftKings, but he's doing everything for this team. Usage rate is up around 20%. Assist percentage is in the mid-teens. Rebounding percentage is up around 20%. He's averaging over 20 rebound chances per game, and he's playing 32 minutes or so in competitive games. So he's expensive enough now where he's not like a huge priority for me. He was 50% owned in cash, 30% owned in tournaments last time at like 5,600. 7,100 I think should alleviate that, but I still think he looks pretty good even at that price.
He's always been good. He was good in Toronto. He's been good in San Antonio. If he gets minutes, he's viable, and he's getting a boatload of minutes. So I'm there with you. I think on FanDuel, getting the exposure makes the most sense. But yeah, 7,100, definitely sticker shock for me there. Let's go to the Dallas side here. Luka Doncic seems like somebody you might want to be paying up for in lineups, huh?
Yeah, but I will say, and this is going to sound like I don't like Luka, and that's not the case. Every single time, or not every single time, most times that Kristaps Porzingis is ruled out, Luka's ownership skyrockets, but his average production doesn't. And so it's always a weird situation where I really like Luka, but I would really like him if Porzingis were in also. His rates and his usage rate increases a little bit, a couple of points without Porzingis. His rebounding percentage jumps like a point. His assist percentage comes down a little bit, but his average production is about the same, going back to, however long that he's been playing with Porzingis. So, I'm not saying it's a negative for Luka or anything. I think the ceiling is probably a little bit higher just because you don't have the threat of Porzingis, being the main scoring option in any one game. But I think that typically the ownership increases more than it really should. Right now we have him at 36% on DraftKings. By comparison, we have Curry at 22%. I think Luka should be the higher owned of the two. I don't think you should have a really wide margin, though. I think the range of outcomes are pretty similar. So long story short, I love Luka here. Play Luka, but I do think, just be aware of where that ownership ends up, because a lot of times I think he ends up being over-owned because people overestimate the impact of Porzingis being out. Already got the alert from DraftKings, Porzingis is out, so Doncic looks even better. And it's just like, okay, I guess.
And then the rostership just jumps to the moon, and then you're all sorts of screwed there if he doesn't go off. But yeah, it's Luka Doncic with a ceiling in any spot, Kristaps or not. Rest of this team, though, looks pretty enticing without Kristaps Porzingis. Who do you kind of see being the main beneficiaries from the Dallas side?
So I'm assuming that Maxey Kleber starts in place of Porzingis. If that's the case, you're probably getting around 30 minutes or so. He's not a very good fantasy option, but even at like a 0.6 fantasy point per minute projection, he looks okay at 3,200 if he does get around 30 minutes. So good point per dollar play, pretty unlikely to be, the kind of guy that you have to win a tournament, but it will let you get some other stuff into your lineups. Dwight Powell, I think, looks pretty good as well. And Boban's also questionable. Normally that wouldn't really matter, but with Porzingis already out, you have Sterling Brown out. If Boban's out, it just makes it possible that Powell plays even more minutes here. I think at 24 to 26 minutes, Powell already looks like a pretty good value, kind of in the same mold as Kleber, where he's unlikely to put up a massive score, but he's also a good point per dollar value. But if Boban's out, it kind of ends up being a situation where, you can get some Maxey center minutes, but the wings are a little bit short today too. Maybe Powell plays 27, 28 minutes if Boban's out and you can't give him a stint per half. So I like Powell. I think that I would throw a couple of minutes on him if Boban sits as well.
Tim Hardaway Jr., 35% ownership at $5K on FanDuel. Yikesies. That's a big number to be looking at for him, but I think it makes a lot of sense. Even just 0.83 fantasy points per minute, we know the ceiling can definitely be there for him, but at 35%, is there any apprehension with Tim Hardaway Jr. over there?
35% Tim Hardaway Jr. I mean, yeah, that's always pretty scary because he's a scoring dependent player that's still playing with Luka, but he should get a bump with Porzingis out. That is usage that, a little bit of it, like we said, will go to Luka, but Hardaway is going to get more of it than Finney Smith and Dwight Powell and Maxey. Like, these guys aren't just going out there and chucking up shots. Tim Hardaway certainly would be happy to. So 5K looks really good for him on FanDuel. 6,400 is more difficult on DraftKings. Like, he still offers upside there, but it's a lot riskier play because he kind of just projects around 30 DraftKings points and is a little bit overpriced.
Anything else from this game for you?
Jalen Brunson at 5K, you can go back to him. Don't expect the same level of performance that you got last time out, but he's still about a 0.94 fantasy point per minute guy, locked into like 25, 26 minutes. It's still, just a pretty solid value. Finney Smith, more potential rebounding opportunities as well, but I think he's still priced pretty much where he should be.
And did somebody say value? Let's head to Memphis. We've got +6 at Golden State, 229. By far the fastest, best game environment here of the night. Ja Morant, Steph Curry posing each other. That'll help with pace a little bit here. But speaking of value, we've got D'Anthony Melton, Desmond Bane jumping off the page here, but now under 25% ownership. I would expect it's still going to be over that based on what they've been rostered, even on like 10 game slates like yesterday, 34% you saw for Bane. But now Neto is going to be absorbing some of that. Does that make either of those pieces more or less appealing to you?
If their ownership comes down, they become more appealing. But even at their ownership, I think they look fine. One concern I have with Melton, it's the opposite of the Tyrese Maxey rotation from yesterday. So far this year, Melton had been getting basically every minute that Ja Morant was on the bench. Yesterday, he did not. That's an issue. Like he's still okay. He's still cheap enough where if you're getting 30 minutes from Melton, he's okay. But I really would like him to be getting 10 to 12 minutes without Ja Morant on the floor. So that is something I'll be paying attention to tonight. And it is a little bit concerning. Desmond Bane not on the injury report today after leaving yesterday's game, missing the fourth quarter. So he's looked really good this year. 24.5% usage rate. He's playing around 30 minutes per game. I really, really like him as a value play again tonight at 4,900. I think that this is a game where, there's just going to be opportunities for him to score. He's clearly taken on that role. I think you could see more small lineups for Memphis that maybe even leads to a couple more minutes for Bane. So I like him quite a bit. I think they're both good plays. If I have to choose one, I would take Bane over Melton.
Jaren Jackson Jr. I absolutely love this cat. They got blown out. They definitely waved the white flag pretty early in this one. So they kind of limited everybody's minutes here, but he's kind of had his minutes limited because he can't keep his hands to himself. And that's kind of always been the issue with him here. Jaren Jackson Jr., Steven Adams, this entire front court, kind of what are you looking at from them on DraftKings?
I'm kind of surprised by Jaren Jackson's projected ownership. I get it. Like he's a high upside guy. He's really talented. I like him as a player. I just haven't been as enamored with him as like it seems like the field has so far this year. He's averaging a fantasy point per minute, which is fine. But when you're likely only playing 30 to 32 minutes, it's not that great at 6,500. It's just a situation where I think he's got a really high ceiling. He's really, really good. He can go out there and put up a massive game. But if he's close to 20% owned, you're kind of like paying for the ceiling in a way where, it's kind of like, okay, where's the edge? I rostered him. I finally get that big game. And so did 20% of the other people. So I don't really get it. And I don't mean that in like a disparaging way about Jackson again, because he's not one of these guys where I look at it and I'm like, I don't know what the field is doing. Like, I feel really confident not having a lot of him. It's scary because I think he's a good player, but at that ownership, I don't love it. I also think you could get some more minutes at center here. This is definitely a matchup where you could see potentially smaller lineups from Memphis that could benefit, Jackson's rebounding numbers. But you mentioned Steven Adams. I think he's kind of interesting. He's 5,600. He's been really productive on a per minute basis this year. He sucked yesterday because he was in foul trouble a lot. If he plays his normal minutes here, I love that price tag. I'm not convinced he does. It just seems like it's a spot where you could get like 26 minutes from Adams, get a little bit more Brandon Clark, get, like more Kyle Anderson on the wing. So getting to a little bit of Adams and, hoping that he plays those 30 minutes is fine. But I do also like the idea of, so basically I think what is most interesting to me here, there's kind of two ways that you can see it going, right? Like Steven Adams plays 30 to 32 minutes and does really well at 5,600. Steven Adams plays 6 or 7 less minutes and you get more Brandon Clark at 3,100, more Kyle Anderson at 4,600. None of those guys are really popular. So I like getting to all three of them in tournaments, not together, setting a rule, because I don't know how the rotation is going to go. I wouldn't be surprised if they play small. I wouldn't be surprised if they just have Steven Adams grab every single missed shot from Golden State. But you kind of just have the field like taking the middle and deciding that there's just nobody on Memphis getting rebounds today.
That's kind of like why I like giving a boost to Melton, giving a boost to Bane as well, because then you can kind of mix and match some of the plays from this late night hammer to kind of fit what you need to, if you need to make up some ground, getting to some guys like Brandon Clark, not even on the radar for me. So that's a nice call just in terms of, we do not know anything. And if you know how this Memphis rotation is going, you're probably lying in this spot. It's obviously going to be a game that's moving. So anything else from them?
No.
All right, let's ground it out here. We got Steph Curry. he seems pretty important to talk about here on this slate. 33.3% rostership over on FanDuel. On DraftKings, 23.4%. He does everything for this basketball team. He's creating, he's rebounding at a higher clip than I can recall in a while. 10 rebounds in his first 2 games right out of the gate against the Lakers and Clippers, 7-6 here. I mean, he's doing absolutely everything for this basketball team. At 10-9, are you finding room for him today?
Yeah, and I think that the more value that opens up, the easier it is to get there because, obviously I made my point about Luka, but I still think he projects higher than Curry at basically the same price point. So getting all that extra value does make it easier to get, Luka plus Curry lineups. But also, I think with the ownership discount, making some pivots to Curry makes perfect sense in tournaments as well. He has the second highest rebound percentage on the team behind Kevon Looney right now.
Unreal.
I don't necessarily think that continues, but he's, it's even if it comes down a little bit, like you're still getting some boards there, which is nice. He's got about a 31% usage rate this year. Going back to last year without Oubre or Weissman on the floor, he's at like 37%. So he's just always a really, really high upside guy. I think he falls a little bit behind Luka just because, Luka's rebounding numbers are even better. He's a higher usage guy, or at least the same. This year he's been higher usage. So I think that, and he's a higher assist guy. So I think Luka's better from a fantasy standpoint, but I think it's pretty close.
All right. And then the rest of this team, for me, it's Jordan Poole, Andrew Wiggins, Draymond Green. I mean, Andrew Wiggins, the price tag is 6,100 still. We haven't seen him exceed 31 minutes. He's got to start trending up here eventually, you would think, but Jordan Poole been really, really good here as well. Who are some of the better ancillary options from Golden State for you?
I think all 3 of those guys look pretty similar to me. Draymond, Wiggins, Poole, they're all, I think, priced about where they should be. Poole has a high ceiling, but he's still, playing most of his minutes alongside Curry, which hurts. Draymond Green, you have seen get up to 34 minutes a few games in a row now. That's encouraging. Wiggins, like you said, only playing 30 to 31 minutes. At some point, he's going to play more, and I doubt that it's announced before the game when it's going to happen. So It's kind of always appealing going to guys like that, where a month from now, you're going to be projecting Wiggins for 34 minutes a night. At some point over the next month, you're going to get the game where it's just like, oh, Wiggins played 34, 35 minutes. Didn't see that coming. So that's always, kind of appealing from a tournament standpoint. But Curry, the priority for me. Mix in some Draymond, some Wiggins, some Poole.
Anything else from Golden State? Because I see nothing.
Nope.
All right. That's beautiful. That is the NBA Deeper Dive. We've got the Live Before Lock crew coming over right after this. Greg, LaMarca, thank you so much to Adam. Great analysis. Thank you so much to Jordan Klein behind the glass there. Hit that like button for us. That goes such a long ways. I can't tell you enough. I appreciate everybody here in chat hanging out. 2.6K people on a Thursday afternoon. Best of luck tonight with your lineups. And then the NFL Showdown Live Before Lock coming up at 7:15 p.m. Eastern time. That'll be Lofty, Alex, the Boss Man, and Ben Rasa taking you guys all the way up to lock of a really entertaining Arizona Green Bay game tonight. He's Adam. He won 100K. I'm Eric. I'm going to go eat a 100K calorie burrito. We'll see you later.
the Awesemo NBA Live Before Lock show, sponsored by Yahoo. And boy, do I have some exciting announcements here. Mostly my microphone potentially working better now. I'm well aware there's been a lot of echo, something that I worked with Chris Carra on today, basically the entire afternoon to try to fix it. We ultimately found out that if we made this look as phallic as possible in front of my face, it reduces the echo by a slight amount. So there we go. We've accomplished that. Also, ordered myself a better microphone, which should also help reduce the echo going forward. But for now, the setup should be a little bit different than what it's been, and hopefully this makes it a little more listenable. Also, I'm joined with my buddy Matt LaMarca here, joined us last week for Live Before Lock. He's back again. Matt, we've got a lot of injuries on this slate. How are you feeling about it?
Good. And just to try and play off you a little bit, I decided to make my microphone a little bit more echoey. So keep the balance of things in flow.
Yeah, and I like the echo. It was really, when I first moved into this house, the echo was really bad. Then it kind of went away. Then all of a sudden it came back. So whatever. I'm no technician. I just do whatever people tell me to do. And then whatever works, whatever doesn't. Let's go over some of these injuries today. These are all of the players who are currently listed as questionable. For people who are listening who are not aware, Joel Embiid, Zach LaVine are both questionable play. Those are the two stars. But then on the other side also, where we got role players who are still going to be important for DFS purposes, Bojan Bogdanovic and Bogdan Bogdanovic questionable, which is certainly going to be something that raises some sort of concerns and confusion.
Will play, by the way. That's
did we just find that out?
Hawks drop. Everybody's in.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, as I'm talking, doing the intro, we did find out Bogdan Bogdanovic playing, Lou Williams playing, Kevin Huerter playing, Trey Young playing. So look, I was going to ask you what the implications were of some of these injuries, who you thought was going to play, not play. And all of a sudden we found out that Bogdan Bogdanovic is going to be playing. So let's just jump right into the Hawks news right here. And then maybe we'll just end up doing news as it breaks throughout the show. But what do you make of this Hawks team now that everybody's in? I was hoping we were going to get some value with potentially one of these guys being out. But I don't know that there's a whole lot to see here, at least from a guard and wing perspective.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing is that this team isn't expected to garner much ownership. They're taking on a Wizards team that we know was really friendly for fantasy purposes last year. So I don't mind using some, pieces here and there as a sprinkle, but there's not a ton of value that's really standing out to me on this team. I think Clint Capella is always someone you can consider in tournaments. We know that he's got, the 50 plus type ceiling. He hasn't really showed it very much this year, but he did have some great games last season against the Wizards. Completely different front court now, so I'm not sure how indicative of anything that is, but Capella is always somebody that I can be talked into when he's going to be at like less than 20% ownership.
Yeah, I really like Clint Capella, and I've been chasing Capella. Not the first game of the season. First game of the season, he was limited, but since then, I've been chasing Clint Capella because I think he's going to have a monster rebounding year. And just circumstantial, there's certain things that have happened that have prevented him from having some games, some bigger games. There was foul trouble, I think, early in the Cleveland game, and then we had other blowout situations. The game against Detroit, they won by 18. It was never really all that competitive. Then yesterday's game, he just kind of sucked yesterday. He didn't really do a whole lot while he was on the court. But I really do like Clint Capella. He's one of my favorite GPP plays on the slate. So I'm totally on board with you in terms of Clint Capella being an interesting guy to look at. Trey Young, I thought there was potential for him to pick up some more usage if Bogdanovic was going to be out today. But now that we find out that Bogdanovic is definitely going to be in, I'm just preferring to pay up for Luka Doncic, pay up for Steph Curry at the point guard position. So we could start right there by talking about the guards, and I think that is a good transition point here for us. Now that we know all the Hawks news, how does Trey Young compare to you as a pay-up option relative to the other guys we have guarding Curry and Doncic?
Yeah, I think he's pretty clearly in a tier below. Luka Doncic, we all know that he's already one of the best fantasy players in the league. Now you factor in without Kristaps Porzingis, he can be a little bit more involved. Although the on-off numbers for Doncic with Porzingis, not nearly as drastic as you might think. He does get a slight tick up in fantasy points per minute, but we're talking, 3-4 fantasy points per 36. So it's not like Doncic goes from being this superstar player to an absolute 100% can't fade smash. Like he just goes from being a really good player to being a really good player. And I think he's totally in play every time he takes the slate. But if you also wanted to pivot to a guy like Steph Curry at lesser ownership, I think that's perfectly fine too. Curry has just been crushing for the Warriors this season. I don't see why that would change in a pace-up spot versus the Grizzlies. This game's got the highest total on the slate. The Warriors have the highest implied team total on the slate. I actually think when you factor in ownership, I might give the slight edge to Curry in that department.
Yeah, and for cash games, I definitely think Luka is the option here. Here's something I'm finding with this slate, though, is there's a good amount of value on both DraftKings and FanDuel. FanDuel, the pricing overall is just less restrictive than DraftKings. There's a lot of cheaper players I like. We'll talk about later with Porzingis out. Maxey Kleber, I expect he's going to be starting today. Dwight Powell, he should be in line for extra minutes. I'm not finding it all that difficult to make lineups that have both Steph Curry and Luka Doncic in them. And one other thing I'll mention about Luka, if you look at his numbers without Porzingis on the court, they're not really all that much different over the last few years. His assist rate goes down, his usage rate goes up, ultimately becomes the same fantasy player. However, that's still a really good fantasy player. So it's not anything I'm looking at and being like, oh, look at, he doesn't get that much of a boost. He has a positive matchup against the Spurs. We have a lot of value on the slate and not really that many guys to pay up for when you consider that Joel Embiid has looked pretty not like himself to start the year due to the bad knee, which I don't know if that's ever going to go away this year. This could end up just being kind of a lost year for the 76ers. So Luka Doncic, Steph Curry, to me, I'm trying to jam them into as many lineups as possible. Are you also kind of trending towards stars and scrubs builds?
I am, but I find myself with a lot of Bradley Beal tonight. You said you're chasing the Capella game. I feel like I'm chasing the Bradley Beal game. Everything suggests that this guy should be having a career season. His usage rate is the highest it's ever been through the first 3 games he's played. It's over 36%. Now we take away Spencer Dinwiddie, who's out tonight. I think that this guy has the potential to jump into like a 40% usage type role. The only thing he hasn't done to start the year, and it's pretty important, is make any shots, right? He's 33% from the field, 16% from 3-point range. We have a long enough track record to know that Bradley Beal is going to make some shots eventually. And I'm not missing that game, like I'm not missing the Bradley Beal bounce back spot. And I have plenty of exposure to him tonight. I want to be well over the field.
Yeah, I think that is a sensible way to look at Bradley Beal. Let's see, where am I at in terms of my builds right now? Bradley Beal in the most recent run of ownership. And let me refresh this to make sure I'm looking at the most recent numbers here. And we have not yet gotten an ownership update since all the news. By the way, Bojan Bogdanovic also playing. So there we go. That kind of helps solve us from any kind of real confusion. We have to constantly say people, hey, Bogdan's in, Bojan's out. We've got both of the Bogdanoviches are in. So that clears that up. Bradley Beal projected for 13% ownership right now on DraftKings. On FanDuel, a little more popular, 27%. He's also on $8,700 on FanDuel. So I have more exposure to Steph Curry today than Bradley Beal. I have more exposure to Luka Doncic than Bradley Beal. But with that said, I mean, I still have Beal in 20% of my lineup. So that is a little bit overweight to the field on DraftKings. So certainly somebody who I think is sensible for GPPs relative to his ownership. And like I said before, I don't find pricing to be all that restrictive today. There's a lot of cheaper guys to go to. Now, there is one guy who I am a little bit struggling with, so I want to get your take on him, Matt, and that is Jalen Brunson. And the reason being is, even though I don't think he's going to be maybe a direct beneficiary from Kristaps Porzingis being out, meaning I don't think that we see Jalen Brunson all of a sudden like, oh, Porzingis is out, therefore Brunson plays, like 36 minutes or anything like that. There is a little bit more usage up for grabs. And then we have seen in the past without Porzingis, there have been times where the Dallas Mavericks have played a lot of smaller lineups and have been willing to potentially start Brunson in these spots. So I don't think he's going to start here, but still we've seen him pick up extended minutes and even just 3-4 extra minutes, a little bit extra usage. That makes him a good value play to me. I'm a little concerned though that might not be the case in terms of we just might not see him totally blow up. So I was getting to him a ton in my initial build and I'm trying to roll it back a little bit, but how high are you on Jalen Brunson today?
Yeah, I think he's a reasonable play. I think he's probably going to be overowned, right? We look at his production to start the year. He's been awesome. He's at 1.08 DraftKings points per minute. That's brought his salary up to a season high $5K. So you're paying for a guy at his ceiling if you're targeting Brunson tonight. And he's also going to be, we have him projected for right around 23.5% ownership on DraftKings. That kind of formula to me makes him somebody I don't want to be overexposed to, but I do think you want some of him for sure. I think this might be a spot where I'm approaching it as I'm just going to kind of stay a little bit below the field, equal with the field. But yeah, like the ceiling in this spot is certainly there. It's just that considering how expensive he's got a little bit more risk than usual as well.
Yeah, and just when I was going off my projections, building lineups at first, like, oh, I'm getting to Jalen Brunson just popping up everywhere for me. And I was like, I feel a little uncomfortable with that. So trying to roll back a little bit. And then if we do get some more of these guys rolled out, he's just going to get pinched based on better value plays opening up for me anyway. But I want to ask you now about Zach LaVine, who's currently listed as questionable to play. The most recent report we got on Zach LaVine, he has a fairly significant thumb injury. He has some ligament damage there. However, what we understand about the injury, which is based on, a couple of tweets from Shams and Woj, it's not like I'm a doctor or anything like that. This is apparently not something he can make worse. It's just a thing where can he tolerate the pain? And at least from Zach LaVine, the quote we had is that he was willing and wanted to play through it. But then the injury report comes out and he's listed as questionable, which brings that all into question. There's too much uncertainty for me to actually want to play Zach LaVine. But I'm going to ask you, if he is out, what do you think the ramifications become for the Bulls offense? Or maybe do you want to play Zach LaVine today?
Yeah, I do love me Zach LaVine, but 8,500 in a matchup with the Knicks is not all that appealing to me. And I do think he will play. He sounds like he wants to play. I don't think that, a partial ligament tear is something that's going to get better by him sitting out one game. So it doesn't make sense for him to rest. Like if he's going to play through it, he should just play. And if he's not, he should get the surgery. This whole Bulls Knicks game, like it doesn't scream like a fantasy smash spot. If LaVine is surprisingly ruled out, we can probably get a little bit more DeRozan in there. DeRozan quietly plus 30% usage rate the last 3 games, over 31% even in each of his last 3 games. He's relatively affordable at 7,600 on DraftKings. I think you could get some exposure in there, but the Knicks have just been a terrible fantasy matchup for the past year plus. They play at a really slow pace. They're good defensively. Their numbers aren't quite at that level yet this season, but I expect them to be with a Tom Thibodeau team. So I'm not actively targeting the Bulls tonight.
Yeah, and well, even if LaVine is out, though, you still don't think that it's a team that you would get to that much?
No, I don't.
So I'm trying to pull up the on-off court numbers when LaVine's off the floor this year. Here is the issue. We're looking at very, very limited, very limited data because the player who leads the Chicago Bulls in playing time this year when LaVine's off the court, DeMar DeRozan has played a total of 51 minutes this year with Zach LaVine is off the court. That's all the sample size we have to go off of. In those 51 minutes that we did have a 34.7% usage rate, he scored nearly 50 DraftKings points per 36 minutes. So I think intuitively it makes sense that we could expect, all right, if there is no Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan's going to carry a higher usage rate, and he would be the guy that kind of leads the offense. Lonzo Ball, who's also playing a ton of minutes recently, 38 minutes in each of the last 2 games for Lonzo Ball. He is scoring 47.48 DraftKings points per 36 minutes in the minutes that DeMar DeRozan's off the court. Now, with that said, though, Lonzo Ball has been priced up fairly expensively over on DraftKings. He's going to be a little popular on FanDuel. He's up to 7,500 on DK. Is there any value play, though, on the low end do you think could step into the starting lineup? Say, like maybe Alex Caruso, that would be appealing to you? Or is it still just thing matchup is bad, you don't think it makes sense?
Yeah, Caruso would be interesting. Patrick Williams at 3,800 too. You could probably consider him, but it does look like chat is telling us that LaVine.
Now LaVine's every time I bring up any of these injuries for a player, as we start talking about it, comes out. We've had both Bogdanovic has happened. Now LaVine is not officially in, but he's been upgraded to probable. But for all intents and purposes, we could expect that he's going to play. So yeah, we could just drop this conversation. Doesn't even matter who's going to be a good value play if LaVine is out because we just found out that he's going to be in. So moving onward, then something I will add on LeBron James for Friday's slate. Tomorrow, he has been listed as questionable. So that ankle injury appears to be something that's actually really
over and under 45 questionable games for LeBron this year.
Oh, over. He was listed as questionable almost every game the last 2 years. So like that's the easiest over in the world. He's going to be, and he's been listed as questionable every game so far this year as well. Even opening day, second game, they ultimately ended up upgrading him to probable in those spots. But all right, that aside, some of the cheaper guards who I think are good talking points here, DeAnthony Melton as well as Desmond Bane. The Grizzlies situation without Dylan Brooks in there, we've seen both Melton and Bane play really well. Frankly, I think a lot better than what we typically see out of them when Brooks is out there. What do you think about Melton and Bane as value plays? Because I think both of them warrant consideration.
Yeah, and both guys going to catch ownership. Neither guy grading out particularly favorably in the boom bust probability tool, but two guys that I think you kind of have to give at least some consideration, even as chalk plays with how they've played this year. Melton is the guy for me that I think I prefer. He has been, a point per minute type of guy for most of his career. He's been at, up over 30 minutes recently. Not in the last game because that was a bit of a blowout, but I think that he's probably the safer bet. I know that Bane has been great this year too, and he is a smidge cheaper, but I would rather just go with the safety of Melton, in my opinion.
Yeah, I have a slight lean towards Melton. Something else also that kind of worries me. Desmond Bane briefly left yesterday's game with an injury. He got hit in the face with an elbow, and maybe that could be something that's a little bit of a concern. He was crazy on a points per minute basis yesterday. Desmond Bane ended up playing 23 minutes, scores 29 DraftKings points in those 23 minutes. But ultimately, I'm a little higher on DeAnthony Melton, both as a real life player and his ability to contribute fantasy points. So I have more exposure to Melton today. Are there any other guards that are pivotal pieces of your lineups for today that we've not talked about yet?
Well, I think Neto becomes interesting, right, with the news that that the point guard there is going to sit Dinwiddie. Like, he becomes an interesting play at 4K. I don't think I've seen an updated run on the ownership projections, but I would imagine he becomes, somewhat popular as a value play. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm limiting my exposure. Also, I have some Mike Conley at 5,900. I think that's a pretty fair price tag for him. I have some Kemba Walker at 5,400 on DraftKings. I think that, that 5K range, there's some guys that I like, but other than that, you want to get the studs in, and then you can go down and get some value with guys like Neto.
Yeah, I think that is totally sensible. I want to go back to look at Raul Neto last year, because he started a handful of games last year for the Wizards, and fairly similar situation where it wasn't Dinwiddie on the team, it was Westbrook, but basically it was still kind of 1-for-1 Bradley Beal, the secondary store. Raul Neto ended up starting, and he showed some ceiling in those games. See a game May 6th against the Raptors, he scored 37 fantasy points. He had back-to-back games over 30 fantasy points in April against the Warriors and the Thunder as a starter. So Neto produced pretty decent results last year as a starting point guard. And like you said, the most recent run of ownership, Neto is only projected for less than 1% ownership. So we still are going to need some kind of update there. We have not yet gotten one since the injury news. Now, the last time I said that we were looking for an update, whether it be injuries, we got one right afterwards. So let's see if that same magic works. I press the refresh button. Nope, not quite yet. No, nothing else from the from ownership updates here. But anything else from the guard spot? I know I asked you that before, but any other lingering thoughts you have, or else we'll move over to some of the forwards.
I think that's it. I mean, the chat is now saying that it looks like I'm terrible with names right now. Jeremy Grant is going to suit up today. If he was out, I think there was some interesting, like, low-owned potential options to explore with the Pistons. But if he's going to play, that kind of takes those guys off the board.
Yeah, he is listed as probable. So the only key player we have right now listed as questionable. I mean, Boban's listed as questionable. I like to think he's a key player. But I mean, maybe from a standpoint of, you never know, he could end up in the rotation. But I'm not playing Boban tonight. But Joel Embiid being listed as questionable. You asked me how many games LeBron James is going to be listed as questionable this year. Joel Embiid might be listed as questionable every game this entire season, not just because it's a standard practice by the Philadelphia 76ers, but I think they really don't know if he's going to play every day until he goes out and warms up and sees how he feels. Did you see that story the other day from Ramona Shelburne? Well, she said about Joel Embiid that after the first game of the season, he wasn't able to walk for 2 days and that he had a lot of pain. So this is going to be an ongoing situation with Joel Embiid. I think he's going to end up missing a lot of games, but the key takeaway there, he's the only key player that's listed as questionable right now for today's slate. Let's move over to the forwards now. And I think right where we should be starting here, but Luka Doncic, he has forward eligibility. But Maxi Kleber is who I expect is going to end up starting today in place of Kristaps Porzingis. That's the reports we've had from earlier in the day, is that it's going to be Kleber. Now, potentially, we've seen Boban start in these spots. We've seen them go small and start with Jalen Brunson. I'm assuming it's Kleber. He is very cheap on both DraftKings and FanDuel today. Is he your favorite value play on the slate?
I don't know if I would go that far to say he's my favorite value play on the slate. The thing with Kleber is like he could play 35 minutes and he still wouldn't be a lock to hit 20 DraftKings points. Like the guy has very little ceiling. So we're really counting on some big volume, putting him in the lineup. And it should be there, right? I would have him projected for, 28 to 32 minutes, somewhere in that range. So I think you can feel good that he's going to return value, but is he going to give you that tournament winning upside? That I don't know. Like to me, the best use of Kleber is if you want to build some of those, superstars and scrubs type teams where you get in Doncic and Curry or, one of those guys and Beal, something like that. But I don't think that he's going to be like a slate breaker.
So here's what I'm getting to a lot of Maxi Kleber. He's actually my most rostered player on the slate right now. And it's not because I have him projected for some asinine amount of fantasy points. I have him at a little over 19. But here's what still gets me to a lot of Maxi Kleber. It has less to do with him and more to do with by rostering him, I'm now able to play Steph Curry, Luka Doncic in some of the same lineups. Bradley Beal also mixing a third star. So that's the real reason that I like to get to Maxi Kleber. And not even that I think that he needs to have a big game to end up in the optimal lineup. I think if Luka Doncic goes out and scores 60 plus fantasy points, Steph Curry scores 60 plus, maybe Bradley Beal scores 50, these are all pretty reasonable outcomes. You're going to need these guys in your lineups to be at the top of GPPs. And then you start to ask, well, what do you have to do to make them get into your lineups? And that's where you have to go to a punt play. And that's where I really think Maxi Kleber makes sense. So I bring this up a lot sometimes where there's a value play I'll be getting to, not because I have them projected incredibly well. I just like the guys on the high end. And to be able to get to them, I have to be getting to somebody. And Kleber's the guy that fits for me. But is there any other option who's, maybe not the exact same price as Kleber, but is kind of that punt type price tag that is enabling you to pay up for stars today?
Yeah. So my favorite value, and he's clearly not as cheap as Kleber, but he's 4,800 is Jayshawn Tate. I think this is a really good spot for him. He really struggled with foul trouble in his last game. He finished with just under 27 minutes. He had less than 12 DraftKings points, but the 2 games prior, he was up 31.5, 44.5. Now you take Danuel House out of the mix. I think that there are a lot of minutes here for Tate against the Houston Rockets team, or he plays for the Rockets, against the Utah Jazz team. It's not the matchup you want, but I think the price tag on him is just very appealing. And I really like this ceiling compared to some of these punt plays. So if on one hand you have a Steph Curry and a Maxi Kleber, and then on the other hand, you have a Bradley Beal and a Jayshawn Tate, I think that second group might have the higher ceiling for tournaments.
Okay. I think that's interesting. So Jayshawn Tate, he is $4,800 over on DraftKings. The price for Jayshawn Tate over on FanDuel is $6,200. I find that to be a little bit steeper price.
Yeah, that's too much.
Massively different looking play on DraftKings versus FanDuel. Jayshawn Tate currently projected for just 15% ownership against the Utah Jazz. It is one of the more difficult individual matchups that anybody could potentially have is going up against Utah. But is Jayshawn Tate, I know you just said that you like him in terms of the points per dollar, but does the matchup scare you off at all?
Yeah, I mean, it's not ideal, but we're talking a 6-game slate. We don't have a ton of room to be super picky about that kind of stuff, especially when we're talking about the value plays at the position. There aren't a ton of guys who are sub 5K tonight who are popping in our models. I think that Tate is somebody who just he's not going to be this cheap all year. So I'm willing to take what I think is a bad price in a bad matchup.
Yeah, and something that I like to reference a lot is just the historical pricing, where you could look at the situation with Jayshawn Tate last year and say, okay, when he was starting for the Rockets, what was his salary on DraftKings? And from there, I think we get a relative idea of what we could expect from Jae'Sean Tate. And it's not the exact same team. They have Jalen Green in there, although they don't have John Wall in there. So maybe that's a little bit of a trade-off where you can say there's about similar expected usage. But you go back to last year and you look at Jae'Sean's price tags on DraftKings, pretty regularly in the high 5K to low 6K range. So to Matt's point right there on what is his salary going to look like going forward, it's probably not going to be 4,800 because we've seen him as a starter for the Houston Rockets, and he was substantially more expensive than this. So I do think that's something that we should expect to change going forward. Here's somebody in that about the same kind of sort of price range that I like getting to. That's Andrew Wiggins. He's somebody I'm overweight to the field on. And Wiggins, as long as Klay Thompson is out, until Klay Thompson gets back, I think Andrew Wiggins is going to be somebody that we're going to want to get shares of. He's somebody who's really inconsistent from a fantasy standpoint, but there is a little bit of upside there. And he's been taking a lot of shots as of late. Last game, 31% usage rate, ends up going 9 of 17 from the field, scores 39 fantasy points. And another guy, if you look at the historical pricing for Andrew Wiggins, the end of last year, he finished the season as a guy who was priced in the low 7K range. Another guy who's about $1,000 mispriced. I like the matchup against the Memphis Grizzlies. This should be a very high-paced game. So Andrew Wiggins is somebody who I like in the mid-range. He's actually my overall favorite mid-range play on the slate. Are you getting to Wiggins today?
Yeah, I am. And the one thing with Wiggins that I find like as a nice perk is he's kind of doing a little bit more in the peripheral categories this year. He's still not a dynamo by any stretch of the imagination, but career high rebound rate. His assist rate is roughly the same as it was last year, but this is a guy who in the past was like the king of the empty 20-point fantasy stat line and who was routinely getting us 20 points and finishing with like 30 DraftKings points. Now he at least has a little bit of upside in the other categories. He gives us a little bit of additional outs if he doesn't score 20 points. We're still targeting him for his scoring, and I do think that he's in a great spot for that tonight versus the Grizzlies, but like just having a little bit of extra production in those other categories is nice. And the only thing that has kept him down has been the minute cap, right? He's been right around 31 minutes or less in each of the last 3 games. Eventually he's going to play more, and it's not like we're going to know in advance more than likely which game that is. So maybe tonight he gets up to 33, 34 minutes. Like it's very possible. And if that happens, he's definitely underpriced. So he's somebody that I'm overweight on.
All right, we got that final piece of important news. Joel Embiid will play today. So the Philadelphia 76ers starting lineup, Tyrese Maxey, Seth Curry, Danny Green, Tobias Harris, and Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid officially ends. So that is some information we're going to break down in a second. But first, today's show is sponsored by Yahoo, and we have a new partnership with Yahoo Daily Fantasy. If you guys are not aware, you could sign up for Yahoo using the link in the description box below. And if you make a deposit, play on Yahoo, enter a contest for the first time, you get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. That is all the tools you need to win at DFS, not just over on Yahoo, but also on FanDuel and DraftKings. We've got everything from projections, ownership projections, and all the tools we have on the site to help you build winning lineups. Also, don't forget that you could sign up for an Awesemo Plus weekly pass for just $29.95, and that also has access to all of the information that you need to win at DFS. And you can use the promo code NBA Live before lock for 25% off your first week of Awesemo Plus Platinum. All right, so let's talk about that Philadelphia 76ers situation and Joel Embiid being in.
I hate them. Can I start by saying that?
No, I think that's totally the reason why
I hate that. Why is he playing? Just what you have one of the most talented big men in the league. You're playing the Pistons. Like, why won't you just let this guy rest and get healthy? I'm sorry, Doc Rivers. You're what are you doing? Please continue.
Here's another thing too. Is Doc Rivers? He's always throwing us off the scent. Remember last year or the game where Joel he was listed
highly questionable.
He was. There was a game where he was listed as questionable, and Doc Rivers was asked for the game. Is Joel Embiid going to play? He was like, why? He's like, why? Yes. He's like, he's questionable injury. Like, that's news to me. I didn't know about that. So everybody assumed, oh, Joel Embiid, he must be playing today. And then the game starts and he gets ruled out 2 minutes after lock. He just never steps on the court. So yeah, screw that guy and everything he stands for. I'm happy that Paul George cheated on his daughter. But now let's talk about Joel Embiid as a possible GPP play today. I just can't trust him in this spot because even if he's going to play and start, I still have to think they're going to limit his minutes some against the Detroit Pistons. And there's other options I prefer to pay up for. Could you talk me into Joel Embiid at all?
Nope. I'm out. I've been chasing the underpriced Joel Embiid game, and I don't think he's healthy enough right now. Like if I knew that Joel Embiid was feeling good and was only going to play 30 minutes, he'd be fine at this price tag, but that's not the case. His usage rate is down almost 8% compared to last year. His rebound rate is down. Like he just doesn't look like the same player. So as much as I'd love to say like, oh, this is your only chance to ever get Joel Embiid at, less than 10% ownership, I just don't, I don't trust him enough to even take some shots with him in tournaments.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And I think the reason it's all correlated to that knee injury. The reason his usage is down, the reason his fantasy production is down. I just don't think he has the ability to go out and really push himself to carry that same kind of workload that he's had in the past. And apparently he wouldn't be playing right now if it wasn't for the Ben Simmons situation. But because Ben Simmons is currently, I don't even know if we're going to call it unable to play, unwilling to play, but whatever the Ben Simmons situation is, Joel Embiid feels he needs to show some kind of leadership by just going out there and playing for the team, even when he's not able to, which I think is a mistake, especially at this point of the season, because sure, maybe he's playing one game now, but it's probably at the expense of playing 2 or 3 games at the end of the season. So long-term, I think this is going to be an issue for the Philadelphia 76ers, which that's obvious, but I think even a bigger deal than most people seem to realize. We do have a super chat here from Justin Bruce, who's saying DK single entry, ownership and preference on Melton, Lonnie Walker, and Jalen Brunson. So, Matt, those names are DeAnthony Melton, Lonnie Walker, Jalen Brunson. Of those 3, which is your favorite play on today's slate?
I would say Melton 1, Brunson 2, Lonnie Walker 3.
Yeah, it is. Melton's definitely number 1 for me. He is one of my favorite cheap guards on the slate to get to. So I certainly think that is the guy to get to there. And let me see. Did he just ownership and preference on Melton, Walker? And let's see if we have an ownership update, because he also wanted the ownership on these guys.
Oh, we got it, baby.
There we go. We got a fresh ownership update. So I could give you the ownership on all of these guys as well. So for DraftKings, DeAnthony Melton is currently projected for 22% ownership. Lonnie Walker is projected for 11% ownership, and Jalen Brunson is projected for 20% ownership. So really similar ownership on DeAnthony Melton and Jalen Brunson. No real differential there. I have Melton projected for more fantasy points, so I prefer him from that standpoint. And then you go down, you've got Lonnie Walker projected for about half the ownership, but I also have him projected for much less fantasy points. So that is going to be a pretty easy DeAnthony Melton for me. I also want to go through some of the other ownership situations that we have on the slate, because one thing that kind of stands out to me here, Devin Vassell projected for 23% ownership over on DraftKings. On FanDuel, we have Vassell projected for much less, 8% ownership, but he's also at 4,800. What did you do with Devin Vassell today? Because he's somebody that I am underweight to the field on.
Same. He's coming off the big game. He had 37 and 0.25 DraftKings points. The Spurs obviously are now playing without Doug McDermott, but to me that kind of feels like chasing. I don't think that we can pencil in Devin Vassell as a every slate stud just because Doug McDermott is sidelined. So I think that this is kind of chasing points a little bit. He's been priced up nearly 1,000. Maybe you still think he's too cheap at 4,200, but I'm kind of in the camp that was an outlier game.
Yeah, same with me. And then also there was a really weird situation with Keldon Johnson's minutes that game. Keldon Johnson ended up playing, let's see, what was the final minutes load for Keldon Johnson? Keldon Johnson barely played in the second half of that game. And ultimately, he's somebody I think is going to play more minutes. So only 23 minutes for Keldon Johnson. He struggled from the field. He only shot 2 of 10, and Devin Vassell was shooting well. So I think Popovich just rode with Vassell down the stretch. I think that we see those minutes that Devin Vassell got that were extra minutes. I think they just go right back to Keldon Johnson today. That's at least how I projected it.
It's a great
if we
call,
get another slate where Keldon Johnson plays 23 minutes and Vassell plays over 30, that's going to be bad news for me. But that's at least how I currently have the Spurs set up. Any other forwards here that are really important pieces of the slate for you? Kyle Kuzma, any real interest in him with the Wizards injury situation?
I think I might have to get over like my Kuzma sticker shock thing because it still feels weird to see him priced up over 6K. And I haven't really clicked his name very much to start the year, but he will have opportunities with Dinwiddie sidelined. There's no doubt about that. Are you partaking in the Thad Young experience tonight by any chance?
No, I have him on a lot of basketball teams, and I've not enjoyed that experience to this point in the season because he has played, what has he played, 1 minute the entire season?
Oh, yeah, baby. One beautiful minute.
Yeah, so Thad Young, who I thought he had potential to, and also I started doing basketball drafts like way, way too early in the process.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought there was a chance that Thad Young was going to start this year on a team that just has a lot of usage and playing time up for grabs. And he just hasn't. He played, so here are the Spurs games he's gotten into so far. 9 minutes, the NP coach's decision, 3 minutes. You know, he's really not produced at all, even when he's been on the court in his limited minutes. So could he enter the rotation? Sure. But we've seen him play as many as 9 minutes in a game this year and score 1 fantasy point in that game. So I don't even know. Number one, I don't know if he's going to get the minutes. Number two, I don't know if he's going to be productive in those minutes. So that's a no for me. But is he somebody who you're considering as just a GPP dart?
He was so good last year, and I too have him on some season-long best ball team stuff like that. I am counting the days until he's off the Spurs and playing for someone that is actually willing to utilize his skill set, because he was really good last year, at least from a fantasy perspective. So I will say that if he can get like 15 minutes tonight, I am somewhat intrigued, but that probably feels like me just wanting to make Thad Young a thing. You know, it's like fetch. It's not going to happen.
And the thing with Thad Young is if he gets minutes this game, then I'll be like, okay, I guess Thad Young is going to get minutes going forward. I just have to see it first. There's enough other value plays I like on the slate. If somebody's really confident that Thad Young is in the rotation and plays, 20, 25 minutes, go for it. I just don't have that kind of confidence whatsoever. We do have a super chat here from Gene B. Kim who's saying, should I fade Montrezl Harrell? Well, it would take quite the balls to fade Montrezl Harrell today. I'll say that much. I think Montrezl Harrell is overall the best play on the slate. And even in our boom bust school, despite all the ownership going to him on DraftKings, so Montrezl Harrell, 5,300. We know Spencer Dinwiddie's out for the Wizards. We also got Daniel Gafford is out. Thomas Bryant not expected back until later in the year. There's a lot of playing time up for grabs in the front court. Montrezl Harrell, an excellent points per minute fantasy producer. So in our boom bust tool, we have Montrezl Harrell projected for 74.3% ownership and have him landing the optimal lineup at a higher clip than the 74.3% ownership. So we have him being under-owned at 74% over on FanDuel. We have him projected for 80.4% ownership, but a 78% chance to land in the optimal lineup. I think fading him is a little bit too bold for me. If you're to say that you don't want to have Montrezl Harrell in quite as many lineups as the field, that's reasonable. But no, I think you have to, in my opinion, at least, you have to have some exposure to Montrezl Harrell if you're playing multiple lineups.
Yeah, he's a lock button play for me. I would rather fade a superstar than fade Montrezl Harrell at 5,300, because the odds of him getting you less than 35 points tonight are so slim. Like he's just going to get you 40. It's going to happen. We have him projected for almost 38 minutes. He's going to smash if he gets that much playing time. I mean, maybe you could tell yourself a story that he gets into foul trouble or something, but we have him having a less than 1.5% bust chance tonight and a greater than 87.5% boom chance. So I'm just locking him in. On FanDuel, he's a mortal lock because you can play him at power forward. On DraftKings, I'm locking him in at center and just treating it like a 7-man contest, essentially.
Yeah, and I have Montrezl Harrell in over 90% of my lineups right now, so I have no issue with going super heavy on him. Now, we did get some other Wizards-related news, and this is the starting lineup today for the Washington Wizards. Montrezl Harrell is going to be starting at center. That's going to help his minutes floor. A little bit of surprise at point guard. We talked about Howell Neto as a potential value play earlier in the show. It's actually Aaron Holiday surprisingly starting at point guard for Washington. I was not expecting that whatsoever. So the starting lineup for the Wizards: Aaron Holiday, Bradley Beal, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Kyle Kuzma, Montrezl Harrell. So what do you make of the minute split and the overall fantasy viability of Aaron Holiday compared to Howell Neto now?
Yeah, it's interesting. I still think Neto is the clear choice for me. This is Holiday's second start, right? He started in place of Beal, the one game that Beal missed. Holiday had 25 minutes in that game. Neto had 29 and a half off the bench. Neto had closer to 30 DraftKings points. Holiday had like 17 or 18. So the fact that Holiday is starting does not deter me from Neto being the better play. I like Neto arguably even a little bit more now because I don't think that we're looking at the massive ownership spike that maybe we would be if he was starting.
Yeah, the one thing about this situation for me, Howell Neto only point guard eligibility, and he's 4,000 on DraftKings compared to Aaron Holiday's point guard and shooting guard eligibility at 3,600. So I'm just really quickly trying to figure out the minutes here, and 13 minutes to the slate lock, so I can't really make this an exact science or anything. But as I rerun my lineups, I think I'm going to get some more of Holiday, even though I have Neto projected a slightly higher, just because multi-position eligibility and $400 cheaper. But is Aaron Holiday still somebody you think is going to ultimately end in your lineups, even if you prefer Neto?
We saw Holiday display some ceiling when he had, spot starts with the Pacers last year. I don't know if he's got like a 25 to 30 DraftKings points performance in him right now with the role that he's playing, especially since I've already been, so heavily invested in Bradley Beal. Like, I don't know if I necessarily want to just play every wizard on the slate. I'm going to have less Holiday than most, I would imagine.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see if we have a quick ownership update, at least as of the last one we had. Howell Neto is projected for 7% ownership on FanDuel. On DraftKings, he was projected for 15. That was in the latest one. Let's see if we have a newer. And there we go. 30 seconds ago, another ownership update. And Aaron Holiday projected for less than 10% ownership on DraftKings. FanDuel, he's projected for just 5% ownership. Neto is projected to be about similar. We've got Neto projected for 6% on DK, 16% on 6% on FanDuel, 16% on DK. If this is going to be what the ownership projections are heading into lock, if Neto is going to be twice as popular as Aaron Holiday, does that change how you view them at all?
Yeah, I suppose it would have to make me at least a little bit more interested in Holiday. I still just think Neto has the higher ceiling of the two by like a good amount. So I again, he would be my preferred option, but perhaps I would try to level my exposure out a little bit between the two.
All right, rerunning my lineups. Let's see where I get to with these guys. I have a feeling I'm going to get to a lot of Aaron Holiday now, which we're running the lineups, see what's coming up. So my two favorite value plays on the slate now are Maxey Kleber and Aaron Holiday. Something else to consider too is this news came out very, very late. And I think had we known that Aaron Holiday was going to be starting even 30, 40 minutes ago, that would make a big difference. The fact this didn't come out until 10 minutes before the slate started, I think could really suppress the ownership here of Aaron Holiday. It's just something that I don't think that a lot of people had a lot of time to react to. Maybe I'm also just kind of look for confirmation bias and saying like, hey, I made my lineups and I got to a lot of Aaron Holiday. Therefore, I need to find more reasons to like Aaron Holiday.
Can I interest you in another interesting piece of news?
Go for it.
Reggie Bullock starting for Kristaps for the Mavericks.
So the starting lineup is. So
I would imagine
Kleber
not starting. DFS would be starting at the 4 with Bullock at the 3 would be my guess.
That's a lot of crap. Let's see. So, but it's funny. You spend all day trying to figure out the projections and the rotations here, and then ultimately you get 8 minutes before the slate starts, and just screw it. We throw it all in the trash and we start all over again. The thing I missed.
I think this is a pure spite move by Jason Kidd from that one guy who he didn't like. Asked him the question about why Bullock isn't playing enough minutes. He said, "Oh, you want me to play Bullock more minutes? Here you go. He's starting now, 8 minutes before lock."
Which also, like, why even say Jason Kidd? If we just rail on all the coaches we dislike, with Jason Kidd being another one. I didn't consider Reggie Bullock at all today. Let's see. What is the price point on Reggie Bullock on FanDuel and DraftKings? Bullock is
38 on DraftKings.
38 on DraftKings and 37 on FanDuel. I guess I'll end up with him in a couple of lineups here, just given another one. Also, this is news that's coming out, really late in the process, right before the slate's about to start. Reggie Bullock, if he scores, Reggie.
See, I like him now. I think that he is a very interesting value play, especially because he has that guard forward eligibility on DraftKings. I love players that I can play in all those different spots. And we know from his time with the Knicks that he can knock down 3-pointers. So, like, I think his ceiling in maybe he can get to 25 minutes. Like I would rather have 25 minutes from him than 28 minutes from Aaron Holiday.
I don't know if I feel quite the same. I think I'd still rather get to Aaron Holiday, especially just because you're losing somebody who is gonna, for the Wizards at least, who is gonna have the ball in their hands a ton. Reggie Bullock is just not gonna have the ball in his hands all that often, in his hands that often, and also, like Jason Kidd's been so hesitant to play him. There was a reporter the other day who asked Jason Kidd, why is Reggie Bullock not getting more minutes? And Jason Kidd like took an offense to it. He's like, what? How many minutes do you think he should be playing? And the reporter just asked him a question. And Jason Kidd go all pissy about it. And all of a sudden he's starting Reggie Bullock.
That's what I'm saying. It's the spite start.
Yeah, three games for Reggie Bullock to share 15 minutes, 17. Three games, not 3 starts. 15 minutes, 17 minutes, 17 minutes. I prefer Aaron Holiday. I'm going to be getting to a little bit of Reggie Bullock, but Holiday is my preferred option. The real takeaway from this in terms of my lineups is I really have to dial back Maxey Kleber. He is not really all that interesting to me. Kleber, I know you were a little lighter on him than I was earlier in the show, but now what is your outlook looking like for Maxey Kleber?
Yeah, again, he was a pure volume play. You know, he was somebody that I was really only interested in if I thought he was going to get around 30 minutes. Maybe he still can off the bench, but I think for sure he becomes, I don't want to say unplayable. He's not unplayable, but he becomes way less appealing to me.
Yeah, I'm rerunning these lineups. Let's see if I'm getting to him about 10, 15% now, it looks like, as the lineups are running. So he's still in there, but not anywhere near the kind of play that he was for me earlier in the day when I thought he was going to be starting. Let's really quickly hit on the center position. Was not expecting us to get all this news and just totally off rail everything we were talking about. So center plays. Even though I'm going to be lighter on Maxey Kleber now, I still like Dwight Powell a lot. Dwight Powell's only 3,700. He's a guy who's still a decent enough fantasy producer, somewhere around a fantasy point per minute. I think he still benefits with Kristaps Porzingis being out, even if we're not going to get 30 plus minutes from Dwight Powell. Some in the neighborhood of 28 minutes, I think, should be enough for him to pay off his salaries on FanDuel and DraftKings. Is Dwight Powell somebody you're going to be getting to here?
Yes. I think that he is a better per minute guy. So I feel much safer with Powell than I do with Kleber at this point. And I do think that one thing, like just to circle back, now that we have some of these additional value plays opening up, now it becomes a night where you definitely, I think you want to have 2 of the more expensive players locked into your lineups. Almost all of them would be my guess.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not even doing it intentionally, but I'm just kind of scrolling through my lineups as I'm uploading them right now. And just by default, a lot of them do just running through my projections through Fantasy Cruncher just because there is so much value available to where now all of a sudden it's, hey, getting some lineups with Aaron Holiday, Howell Neto, Dwight Powell, Reggie Bullock to a lesser extent in the mix. It just makes it pretty easy to spend up for some of these stars. And that happens a lot of times on these slates where you might look at it and you like some of these players in the mid-range, and then the slate ultimately starts. It's like, hey, I just have the best value plays with all the stars on the slate. So I'm getting to a lot of Luka, Curry, Bradley Beal, and that's a lot of my lineups. Those 3 guys, a bunch of garbage players mixed in. Centers, we talked about Montrezl Harrell a lot. He's going to be a chalk play, rightfully so. I think we should be playing Montrezl Harrell regardless of what the ownership is. We talked about Dwight Powell, him being a guy we like. Let's circle back on Clint Capella because he was somebody who both of us brought up at the start of the show as somebody who's a little bit underpriced, should be better going forward. What are you expecting from him from a minutes perspective today?
I would say probably right around 30. That 30 would be a nice, a welcome sight. He hasn't hit that mark yet. He got to 29 in his last game, but I do think if he gets to 30 minutes tonight against Washington, like it would not be a stretch for him to get to 45, maybe even 50. Like he's that type of producer on a per minute basis. He's that good. When he hits his ceiling games, he's a stud. So again, the problem now is just that it's going to be, can you fit a 7K player next to all these other studs that we want to play?
Yeah, so Clint Capella in terms of the mid-range is my favorite mid-range play on the slate, but I don't have that many center spots open. I really like getting to Montrezl Harrell today, particularly on DraftKings. And then you've just got Clint Capella as a center only player, and there's just not as many spots to fit him into. So I like Clint Capella as a from a points per dollar perspective. I would like to be getting to more of him. And I am overweight to the field on him, but I look at that kind of salary. He's not in my single entry lineup. I'd be like, oh, I feel like I should really be jamming Clint Capella in today, but it ultimately just doesn't really fit into my builds quite as much as I would have otherwise liked to. As far as other centers, I've got a really limited player pool at the center position, mostly because of the amount of ownership I have to Montrezl Harrell. Is there anybody else that you're really getting an appreciable amount of?
I mean, Gobert was somebody that I liked earlier in the day. I've kind of come down a little bit on my Gobert exposure, but I still imagine that I'm going to be over the field. I would bet we haven't projected at right around 11% ownership on DraftKings. I'm at closer to 15 to 20. I think that he's been really good. He's averaging 19 rebounds per game. The Houston front court is not all that imposing to me. I know Christian Wood is good, but Rudy Gobert is going to have a lot of time against Daniel Tice. And I think he pretty comfortably returns value here. But it's just a lot of Montrez.
All right. And we've got a super chat here from Cowboy Smith X. He's asking Beal or Trey Young on DK. That is Bradley Beal for me. And I don't want to put words in Matt's mouth, but his answer is going to be Bradley Beal, but I'll let him answer anyway. Beal or Trey Young?
Bradley Beal is maybe my favorite play on the slate tonight.
Yeah, I have no real issues with that whatsoever. FanDuel and DraftKings, I think Bradley Beal, especially now that we've got all this value available to us, I think Bradley Beal makes a whole lot of sense. So we only have a minute to go, and then we're going to have to get out of here because we've got NFL content coming up later on the day. You guys should definitely be liking this video, subscribing to the YouTube channel because we've got all the sports covered. We've got basketball, we've got MLB, World Series, but baseball winding down, NFL, college football, we've got college basketball season starting soon. So guys, do us a favor, like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel so you know when all of our shows are going live. But just a few seconds left here, Matt. Who is the player that is most likely to ruin your slate tonight?
The player that is most likely to ruin my slate. Can I say Ja? I have 0 Ja. So if Ja has a 60 or a 55, that would be very unpleasant for me.
I am in the same boat as you. I did not get to Ja, and he's not all that popular today, but he's so expensive today. His price point, particularly on DraftKings, gotten all the way up to 9,600. So you're ultimately saying, is Trey Young a better fantasy player? I mean, is Ja Morant a better fantasy player than Trey Young, Steph Curry, Luka Doncic? Because that's the kind of opportunity cost to roster Morant. So that's why I didn't get to Morant. I just like those other guys better. Not a dig on Morant, who's been excellent so far this year. But that is going to do it for us today, guys. Good luck in your lineups today, and have a good weekend.